Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome. My name is Sybille van den Hove, and I was asked by Biodiversa Plus to moderate this Science Policy Forum. We're going to talk about building capacities for mobilization of nature-based solutions in implementing the GBF, the Global Biodiversity Framework. So my job is to try to keep speakers on track and to try to keep you happy for being here and not in the Montpellier sun. I hope we will be able to do that. We also expect a lot of great questions from you. Just on my side, we do a Science Policy Forum. Why do we do this? Biodiversity research and science is intrinsically important and intrinsically beautiful. But because of the situation of ecosystems and biodiversity, it also needs to be more than just beautiful and exciting and super important for itself. It needs to be, let's say, in support of policy, in support of action on the ground. So this is why things like this Science Policy Forum are so important. I have to inform you that the meeting is recorded, that there are people online, following online, and they have a hello everyone online. Nice to not see you. They will be able to ask questions, but of course we will take your questions in priority. What are we going to do? There's also a hashtag, I think, on one of the slides. Should appear. That's me. Okay, those of you who are on social networks, hashtag BiodivNBS. So don't forget to tag also. This is for the comms people. What are we going to do? We're going to have a few introductions to the afternoon, and then we will have a keynote speech to set the scene. Then we have presentations on the relevance of nature-based solutions for biodiversity community in Europe. Then a presentation by a duet from the European Commission, and then a break. And then we'll have two panels, one of them on national experiences with NbS, nature-based solutions, and another one on NbS projects and how they can help policymakers. And then we will have a conclusion. Right, so without more delay, I'm pleased to welcome François Pierrot, and he's the Vice President for International Affairs in the University of Montpellier here in France. François.
Hi, everyone. I recognize a few faces that I know from a long time ago. Welcome to Montpellier. I feel some pressure because today we start on time, which is not usual. I have to move that. Okay. This way? Much better. You maybe don't know that, but usually in Montpellier, we always start at least 15 minutes late. So it's strange for me to start on time. Anyway, so allow me first to thank Biodiversa Plus, the European Biodiversity Partnership, for initiating today's gathering and for choosing the University of Montpellier as a host for welcoming you. I would like also to extend a warm welcome to all of you here in that room and also online. Some of you probably travel from far away, and so thank you for visiting us and thank you for being there today. The topic that brings us together today, nature-based solutions. I don't know if the mic is okay or if there's a little noise. It's okay for you? Okay. So this topic is really increasingly urgent. These solutions are a way to address interrelated, intertwined crises such as biodiversity loss, of course, but also climate change, natural disasters, and probably many more. However, developing them requires to produce knowledge first, and then to also address political changes. So you need collaboration, and you need also a strong link between science and policy, and that's why you have this forum today. Here in Montpellier, I think we truly believe in all of that. We've made the nexus food security, biodiversity, and health the very backbone of the strategy of the university. We started that in 2017, so some years ago. We've been one of the institutions which designed the French initiative for nature-based solution. We have a strange name. It's named PEPR, SOLU-BIOD, which means nothing, but it's the French initiative on nature-based solutions. We have hosted one team funded by IPBS in our walls, and we were celebrating in that room yesterday the most recent IPBS report on the large change that we have to do. And we have initiated the so-called Montpellier process as a tool for science policy interface on food care and product issues that we really like to work on. But I do think that Biodiversa Plus is much more than just that, than just believing in the importance of nature-based solutions. Let's go back to the meaning of Biodiversa Plus. It is the European Biodiversity Partnership. Working within a partnership means something very important for me. It's respect. And this word is truly important if you compare to what we witnessed in the last 3 months at the world scale, okay? The lack of respect from some leaders. So respect. Then working on biodiversity means that we plan, at least we try to plan, to get out of today's civilization of economics, where human species is leading, to the civilization of nature, where human is only part of the civilization. And then maybe it's more important to me, working as a European initiative means that we have with us all the power of all European scientists, citizens, organizations, cities, countries. And again, in today's world, reasoning as a European initiative, it's not only important, it may become existential in the next months and the next years. Believe me, as a VP for International Affairs, I'm really not happy to say that. I'm even sad to say it. But maybe in a few years, Europe will be the only safe horizon to do what we are going to do. So in a nutshell, Biodiversa Plus offers many nice features for me: respect, civilization of nature, European actions. And for all those features, I'm more than happy to welcome you all today here, on site or online. And once again, thank you very much for being here. I wish you a productive forum, and I look forward to new partnerships among us and in our networks. Thank you so much.
Thank you, thank you, François. And then you will be welcomed now by Anne-Hélène Prieur-Richard, and she's the head of the Department from Environment, Ecosystem, Biological Resources at the Agence Nationale de la Recherche, which is the national research agency here in France. Anne-Hélène.
Thank you, Sybille, and good afternoon, everyone, on site and online. I'd like to give this address on behalf of our French Ministry for Higher Education and Research, as well as the 4 French partners in Biodiversa Plus. So the ministry in charge of the environment, the Foundation for Biodiversity Research, the French Biodiversity Agency, and the French National Research Funding Agency. And I'm very happy to welcome you for these 3 days of events, in fact, and to launch these new biodiversity-funded research projects, which are going to generate some of the science that on nature-based foundation that has already been called upon by our colleague. And I would like to start by thanking a few people, which I think are at the heart of all of that. First of all, our host, François Pierrot, thank you very much for welcoming you here in Montpellier at the university, but also your colleague, Camille Couralet, who is in charge of scientific actions. And a really big thanks to the Biodiversa Plus organizing committee for these events and the other French colleagues who put a lot of efforts to build these really appealing programs we have in front of us. And last but not the least, I would like to really thank the projects partners, which are newly funded, and to be here to share with us and to embark to produce this new knowledge which is needed, both in terms of new research, but also, as it was already mentioned, for support to decision-making processes. So taking the hat as one of the research funding agencies, I would like to recall the importance for us to fund research at different levels, national, European, and international levels. This is really important not only to address global challenges, but also to build solutions on nature-based solutions. And these synergies and bridges we are building with these different scales are really in support of decision-making processes also at different levels. And I'm very happy to see in the room as well, not only academics or funding agencies, but also stakeholders from different kind of sectors. And that's really key for the research which is wished within Biodiversa Plus. I wanted to give the example of France, and it was already mentioned, SOLU-BIOD, which is a priority research national program for nature-based solutions, which along this BiodivNBS call really is going to build some of those synergies. And during the day, we are going to see this kind of alignment, in fact, in different countries around Europe, and that's really energizing, in fact, I think, for the community. So you are going to provide knowledge for some of your local decision-making processes, but this knowledge is also contributing to European policies and different sectors of these policies: health, biodiversity, climate, food, and so on. So that's really something which is key and very special for research around nature-based solution, but also to the Global Biodiversity Framework at the international level. So by bringing all of this together, something will come out in different areas and will make a very cohesive picture at the end. So I wish you very fruitful discussion over the 3 next days. And I'm really looking forward to seeing the result of this research you are going to conduct. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Anne-Hélène. And now it's my pleasure to welcome Magnus Tannerfeldt. He's the, as you all know, the co-chair of Biodiversa Plus. Magnus.
Thank you very much. So you have already said everything, I think, but I have the pleasure to welcome you as well from our side to this Science Policy Forum today. My name is Magnus Tannerfeldt. I am based at the research funding agency Formas in Sweden. And as said, I'm one of 3 co-chairs for Biodiversa Plus. Is the sound okay up there? Online, I don't know. Right. So first of all, also I want to thank our French partners, the OFR, the ANR, the FRB, the Ministry for Ecology, and of course, our host here in Montpellier, the University of Montpellier. Thank you so much. And it's a beautiful city. So we're really excited to be here. I also want to thank the operational team of Biodiversa Plus, the team that is behind all of this. I will just mention a couple of people, and that is Osman Tikansak, from my colleague from Formas in Sweden, who is the mastermind behind this afternoon here, the Science Policy Forum, and Clara Superby, who is the mastermind or the spider in the web for the whole week of events here. But there are many people who are working on and off the stage, of course. And I also want to thank all our partners, the European Commission, providing co-funding, and all the speakers and participants here, and of course, all the listeners in the room and online. So welcome all. And we have an exciting day, or half a day. And if I could have, oh, yeah. I will just briefly mention the topic of today is how to build the capacities for mobilization of nature-based solutions in implementing the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework, the GBF. And this means to support the creation of nature-based solutions for biodiversity, human well-being, and transformative change across scales in time and geography. And we will discuss how we can work together across these arenas to have nature-based solutions supported and using science to support business and decision-making and policy. So we will hear more about the framework itself, but it integrates findings and policy recommendations from IPBES, the Intergovernmental Panel, Science Policy Platform, on biodiversity and ecosystem services, and building on the goals and objectives of the Convention on Biological Diversity, the CBD. So it's the CBD, the GBF, and the IPBES are the acronyms that we'll be using a lot today. So they are all aligned, and from in a more regional context, European perspective, we have the European Biodiversity Strategy for 2030 that focuses on the actions within the EU to halt biodiversity loss and to restore ecosystems, aligning with the global objectives of the GBF. And from the Biodiversa Plus side, European Biodiversity Partnership, those strategies are well reflected in our strategy, what we call the Strategic Research and Innovation Agenda for Biodiversa Plus, the SRIA, with its themes and actions. Now, what does Biodiversa Plus itself bring to the table? Well, we are part of this landscape, if you will, and we work to very briefly mainstream transformative change into research and innovation and build capacity for science to policy. We support the development of knowledge and the transfer of knowledge in relation to the GBF targets and indicators and the CBD topics of the convention. And we work to improve biodiversity monitoring and reporting and harmonizing that transnationally. So Biodiversa itself is a partnership with 83 partners from 41 countries, supporting excellent research on biodiversity with impact for policy and society. And our partners are mainly ministries and funding agencies for research, ministries in charge of environmental policy, and environmental protection agencies. So these are important national actors coming together in our partnership, which has a budget of total 800 million euros over 7 years of this program. And I will not go into the details of how we work, but we have a number of work streams. So one big thing is, of course, to fund research. So we are launching one call per year, basically, in the order of 40 million euros each. But we also have this work stream working on promoting research and innovation programs and their input to policy, so science policy. And we have a large program on transnational biodiversity monitoring. We work on the global scales and the internationalization of the EU work. And stakeholder engagement, open science, and all of those things. But we also have a specific work stream on nature-based solutions and the promotion or evaluation of biodiversity in the private sector as well. So this is what you will hear more about later. Just to mention, we have what we call a flagship program. One of them, we have several, but one of them is on nature-based solutions. And the idea here is to take all the things that we do on Science to Policy. We have dialogue events, and we have the research calls, and we have fora such as this one, and then we have the monitoring, and we put it all together, in this case, looking at nature-based solutions, trying to create the impact that is actually the purpose of why we're doing all of this. So within these flagship programs, we support this impact work. Right, so that's us. Today, we have here in the room, I don't know how many right now, but we have 140 registered participants and 330 registered online. And I'll just say that this is one in a series of events this week, hosted here in Montpellier. So this morning, there was a CBD workshop, and we have the Science Policy Forum today. Tomorrow, we'll have a full day of a kickoff meeting for all the 34 projects that are funded under our call BiodivNBS. So that will be an interesting day, and that is also sent or broadcasted online for those who are not able to be here. And then on the 10th, we also have a clustering workshop, but that is for the projects to help them see each other and start to discuss also across the different programs and projects. And just to finalize, do tag us on your social media. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Magnus. Now we're going to go into the first speech, and it's the keynote speech. It's going to be by Edna Cabecinha. Sorry for my Portuguese accent. And Edna is going to set the scene, and she's going to introduce the IUCN Global Standard for Nature-Based Solution as a key framework for scaling up NbS aligned with the Global Biodiversity Framework. So who's Edna? I won't tell you everything about her, but she's an assistant professor at the University of Trás-os-Montes e Alto Douro. Sorry for the accent, in the Department of Biology and Environment. She co-leads the Nature-Based Solutions thematic group of the IUCN Commission on Ecosystem Management, and she's also the Western Europe Regional Co-Chair for that commission. So the floor is yours.
I promise I will not sing. Hope. Because. So first of all, thank you very much for inviting me to be here today on this important event related to nature-based solutions. And I'm happy to share with you some of the work that IUCN and its commissions on ecosystem management have been done and still do on nature-based solutions. So IUCN, so I'm bringing more acronyms now, has been founded since 1948 and is the largest environmental network in the world, bringing together governments and civil society that values nature and conserves nature. So more or less, our work on nature-based solution have been shaped and the work that we know now and have been developed on nature-based solutions is based on previous knowledge and experience, like for instance, the work that has been done on ecosystem approach by the CBD, or the ecosystem-based approach on risk reduction, or even the ecosystem-based adaptation or ecosystem services. So it's a huge amount of knowledge that results on what we are today. And since the definition of nature-based solution in 2016, a huge amount of interest, not only at policy level, but also at scientific level have been increased. So I'm just highlighting you some of the milestones that we have been working in IUCN and SEM, namely on the World Conservation Congress in 2014, when we kick off with the 1/3 of the IUCN's global program focus on nature-based solution. Indeed, allowed us to have immense work related to nature-based solution, and going to 2016 to through a resolution approved in the WCC to the definition of nature-based solution, but also his conceptual framework that also results in a publication led by Emmanuel Cohen-Chachin. Afterwards, in 2020, it was possible, following this work, to develop the global standard for NbS. And since 2020 till now, we have been in the implementation phase. And nowadays, we are working on the update of the global standards. And we hope to have it approved in the WCC in Abu Dhabi this year. So the definition started in 2016 through the IUCN, saying that nature-based solutions are actions to protect, restore, and manage modified or natural ecosystems, addressing one or more these societal challenges, and simultaneously address human well-being and also biodiversa benefits, biodiversity, sorry, biodiversa as well. Benefits. And later on, UNEA, working together with the IUCN, bring very similar definition that all have the same goal, and it's really important, this goal to upscale nature-based solution around the world. So to try to clarify and explain how this NbS concept was related to other different concepts that I previously mentioned, we developed an umbrella type of concept on this NbS approach, and also categorized some of the nature-based solutions types on these different approaches. So also in 2006, was really important at this time to clarify what wasn't and what was not NbS. So 8 principles were set to clarify on this issue. Based on all this work, beginning on 2016, and then some work then also on 2029, it was possible to, in 2020, to create the global standard for nature-based solution. And what this operational framework for NbS really aims to establish a common language for nature-based solution, but also to provide a robust framework for design, implementing, assess, adaptation, and improve nature-based solution at a higher scale. So it were defined 8 criteria and 28 indicators that basically could assess if the NbS interventions tackle different societal challenges. It was designed at scale. It brings benefits for biodiversity. It was or not economically viable. It brings more inclusive governance, and also take care of the trade-offs, manage adaptively, and of course, also mainstream and sustainable, saying that NbS should be an integral part of the overall design of policies and measures. So for that goal, 3 products were developed, namely the NbS Global Standard main document and the guidance document that detailed a bit more of the rationale and the requirements behind each criterion and indicator. And for last, the self-assessment tool that you have now the opportunity to use it online and have the possibility to self-assess your project at 4 levels of assessment through guiding questions that will assess each criterion and each indicator individually. So for all this, it was necessary also to establish a government structure for the global standard that is coordinated by the International Standard Committee, now led by Angela Andrade. And this committee is responsible for overseeing and safeguarding the global standard, but also for its revision or update each 4 years, getting the knowledge and the update from the community of users, but also working closely to the NbS Coordination Hub at the IUCN and the national or regional hubs also. So it's not difficult to understand how NbS framework have been increased the question across the several conventions. Some of them were already mentioned here previously, and these are this question have been across at several levels of this implementation of these conventions. And further on, with different interlinkages between these 2 frameworks, for instance, where the global standards for NbS with his 8 criteria and 28 indicators are very close related to the GBF and the 23 targets and respective indicators as well. So in the IUCN and SAM, we have been working now for 3 years. We hopefully hope to bring this publication into an end in 1 month or 2. So it will be available for all of you. And we have been gathering case studies around the world that implemented the global standards in different types of ecosystems, address different types of societal challenge, and involve different types of stakeholders. And the main objective is to learn from hands-on implementations and NbS interventions, but also the use of the global standards and its assessments to disseminate good practices. So since you have the kickoff this week, we hope that the new book would have some of the case studies that will start now with the different case studies on this. So just briefly, because Osmond will kill me if not, just say that one of the case studies is the Portuguese case study. It's not a Biodiversa, but it was an Interreg Atlantic area project included in this that aimed to understand how nature-based solutions could bring benefits to ecosystem services and biodiversity conservation. And through the case studies, it was possible to introduce, since the beginning, a participatory approach. It was really important to have stakeholders at different levels, from policy makers to local community. And this engagement was made from the beginning of the project till the end, and allow us to work with the stakeholders to identify the main environmental problems and prioritize them, also identify the main ecosystem services, identify the main environmental problems and challenges, and the necessary actions to put in the ground, and related to water management, quantity and quality, river connectivity, but also fire risk. It's a major problem in this area, for instance. So we could co-design with the stakeholders the green strategy for the NbS in the Paiva watershed, and this allows us to identify the most vulnerable areas to implement quickly the nature-based solutions, and also to understand what were the main areas to be addressed for biodiversity conservation. And in the end, we could assess our project and the implementation of nature-based solutions that had been done by part of our partners and stakeholders, and see that on criteria 1, 5, and 8 were the strongest, mainly related to the participatory approach and the involvement of since policymakers to local community. It was really important to have these working together. And the criterion 4 related to economic feasibility, and also the C6 related to the trade-offs were not so well achieved, mainly because it wasn't the objective of the project, but also because, unfortunately, the COVID didn't allow us to go further. But it brings us lessons learned how we could work together for not only the monitoring of this project and know what we should improve, but also has a lessons learned to new projects. And I hope this inspired you to also use the global standards to assess your projects since the beginning. So to close, key message to keep it and hashtag it. If so, nature-based solutions framework have been well established and should be mainstream across policies, domains, and areas of application. And the global standard for nature-based solutions, it's really a fundamental framework for design, implement, and assess nature-based solutions intervention, bringing meaningful changes for people in nature, and also aims to be applied at multiple levels, as we have today, at decision-making for projects, but also to private sector interventions. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Edna. We have some time for questions. So I don't know if anybody in the audience has a question. Watching you, it's always hard to do the presentation there.
Thank you very much, Edna. I just wonder, the private sector, what is the response and the uptake of this, or the level of acceptance or understanding of this? Not only the concept, but actually the following these guidelines and everything. Do you see that there is a good chance that this will be incorporated into what they do?
Well, at the moment, we are working on the update of the global standard, and we have been involved many people, namely also the private sector, to improve also these standards. So it brings more clarity also for the private sector, how important this framework and the tool to help to assess different projects on in different NbS interventions, and how they could get from there important information to well, give the money or invest on this issue. That's really an important part of also the standard, because the global standards in the NbS, it's meant for everybody, namely the private sector and policy as well, to apply it and give hopefully some guidance on this, not only, of course, the projects itself and the project leaders.
Other questions in the room?
Thank you. Thank you very much for your presentation. A question on the criteria. How rigid should you be in interpretation of the criteria in order to call something a nature-based solution? I mean, should you apply all 8, and or is there any kind of gray zone or buffer and so on?
We should apply all the criteria. The self-assessment tool allow us to really go through the whole criteria. It's not mandatory to do it by a sequence. We can do it as long as we do the project, but it's really important to go the whole criteria to have the assessment. To let you know that the objective here is not to rank and say, well, my project, there's more to the global standard than A, B, or T. The objective is really to have a tool that could guide us, have a self-assessment to improve our project. So it's really important to go through. And I have to say, for instance, in my knowledge, if I had applied the global standards before the end of the project, it will be very, very helpful because it passes through different parts of the project or the implementation to get around, of course, the whole team to decide how we could improve, and helps you also on monitoring.
Thank you. We're going to take one question from online. Okay, so there's one more question there, so we'll take it here. Sorry, guys online.
So sorry. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much. I had one question because talking about standards and standardization, there's also the work of ISO Biodiversity, the International Standard Organization. And I was wondering how IUCN is involved and if the nature-based solution standard will be somehow integrated into the future ISO Biodiversity standard.
I'm not sure I'm the right person to answer these questions, but I will try to say that we have been working with them closely. So it's one of our standard quality insurance, also in the previous and nowadays also in the update.
I'll take one last question from the lady over there, up there. And then we'll have to close this session.
Thank you for a great presentation. So my question is, you mentioned that there's a close alignment between your framework and the Global Biodiversity Framework. So my question is whether there are any criteria or indicators that connect issues of access to information, public participation, access to justice, defenders, and the cross-cutting issue of human rights integrated to this framework of nature-based solutions. Thank you.
Thank you for your questions. I wanted to say that, yes. In the previous standard and now the update, we have been working closely with indigenous people representation as well. And it's part of the standard to have in consideration all of this. I know that there are different teams working from IUCN and SEM and other commissions of the IUCN working to develop, for instance, different possibilities to measure these indicators to be more accurate the assessment, for instance, since the red list to the typology of ecosystems and so on. So we have been working together to improve both frameworks.
All right, I'd like you to thank Edna again.
Thank you so much for the
great
invitation.
presentation. And we will now go into the next session, and I will ask the three speakers to come up front so that we have less moving around. So maybe Chiara Baldacchini, Daniela Rizzi, and Valerie Kapos, if you could join us on stage. And while you set up, wherever you like, you just sit. Thank you. So the first the session now is about the relevance of NbS, of nature-based solutions, for the biodiversity community in Europe. And we will start with Chiara Baldacchini. And Chiara is an associate professor of applied physics. You always need a physicist in the room, huh? At the University of Ischia. And then she represents the Italian Ministry of, the Ministry of University and Research. And she's in the executive board of Biodiversa Plus, and she's the co-leader of Work Package 3 on NbS. So the floor is yours, and your title is going to be on the green one. Questions we can go through. There we go.
Is it on? Yes. So good afternoon, everybody. I've been already presented, so thank you, Sybille, for the presentation. Thank you all for being here and online. And I would like to thank all the organizers on my side also, and the hosting institutions. And I would like to welcome the partners from the BiodivNBS funded project. We are very happy to have here and to know you now. And I hope that this presentation and the one I will give also tomorrow will be of interest for you, and but for the NbS community in general. Okay, as already Magnus Tannerfeldt said, the nature-based solutions are one of the topics which are cross-cutting in Biodiversa Plus, and we have this flagship program number 3, which means that all the work packages in Biodiversa are involved in promoting the knowledge and the knowledge production and the knowledge uptake from nature-based solutions, because we know, since we work in NbS, that this is key for, especially in connection with the translation from science to policy. No, we have to produce knowledge, and we have to make it available from people that have to understand it and use it to set the stage for future research, but also for future policy, indeed. And in particular, we have a work package in Biodiversa Plus, which is dedicated to nature-based solutions, which is work package 3. And you can see it here. The name is Promote and Support Nature-Based Solutions and Evaluation of Biodiversity in the Private Sector. Because, as you know, the two topics are connected, as we already just said, as a consequence of the question by Magnus to Edna before. And so I will present you now what has been done under the work package 3 in the last 4 years in connection with our main goals, which are basically resumed in this slide, where you can see the structure of the work package. So basically, we are focused on mapping the landscape of EU initiatives in connection with research and innovation for both NbS and biodiversity and business. This is the topic of task 3.1. Why we need this? Thank you for the presentation of the IUCN standard before, Edna. Very important. The IUCN standard is a pillar in NbS research and set the stage for most of the works that have been done, but it's not the only one. So in the last decade, several frameworks have been proposed, several definitions have been proposed, several assessment frameworks have been proposed. And so one of the main goals of this work package is to help stakeholders to get rid of this massive information. So which is the point? How we can get information on these different points of view, which are basically the same, but often declined in different ways. So this is why we need to mapping the landscape and make it clear for users. The second goal is to, starting from this knowledge about what has been done, try to understand what is necessary to do in the future. And so planning future initiatives in research and innovation, or providing the information that can be useful for that. And third, promoting the uptake of knowledge for what we said before. We are producing knowledge on NbS, and it's important to make it available for learning from science. And this can be done in several ways, and I will spend some words about that. So basically, the first 4 years of our works will be resumed within 2025 in 3 documents that you will find online very soon, which are the final guide on the European Research and Innovation Landscape on NbS, the final guide on the European Research and Innovation Landscape on Business and Biodiversity, that will help you and all the NbS community, we hope, to navigate in the several initiatives that the EU, and not only the EU, put on the plate in connection with these two topics which are of our interest. The third document, which will set the basis for future research, will be named Foresight Report on Emerging Questions and Scientific Frontiers on NbS. My last slide will be dedicated to this topic. First, but most of my presentation will present you the work we have done in connection with nature-based solutions. So the guide that will be released within this year will include, we have the authors around here. If you want to ask something, you can ask them directly. We'll present a resume of the mapping that has been done of all the European initiatives in connection with NbS. We'll set the taxonomy of NbS, which is adopted by Biodiversa Plus, and we'll map the tools and methods which are available online, and we'll suggest how to use them. And also we'll report some success stories in connection with NbS uptake and knowledge uptake, just to help the stakeholders in understanding how an NbS can be successfully communicated and how the engagement capacity building can be empowered. Most of this work took the steps from the work that Biodiversa Plus has done and is continuously doing in connection and in collaboration with NetworkNature. NetworkNature will be the object of the presentation of Daniela, so I will not spoil anything now. Just I would like to say that Biodiversa Plus is playing and has played an important role in NetworkNature because Biodiversa is taking care of updating continuously two of the most important resources in NetworkNature, which are the databases of the knowledge gaps on nature-based solutions, and the database of the EU research and innovation projects on nature-based solutions. You can navigate them and be aware of what has been done thanks to the funding of the EU in the last 15 years in this connection, and which are the knowledge gap that can still be addressed, that needs to be addressed. These databases have been analyzed, and the output of these analyses are also at the basis of a very important document that you can find in the NetworkNature website, which is the European Roadmap to 2030 for research and innovation on nature-based solutions. The importance of this roadmap is that in a very simple and, how to say, dry way, he tried to make the synthesis, as we said before, among the different approaches, including, so in a common description, both the IUCN framework and the framework that was previously released, for instance, for impact assessment from the European Union, which was released within the context of NetworkNature, and that brought to the realization of the handbook for practitioner. And we have here one of the editors. I'm very happy to thank her again, Laura. And so this is two frameworks that we have merged together, and that's a powerful result. Another powerful result was that we finally set the point of how you can, which strategies can help you in communicate the results of your research. So, or how can you uptake the knowledge from NbS research and innovation project? So important both for researchers and for policymakers. In these documents that you can find online in the Biodiversa Plus site, you have a synthetic description of the possible ways to foster the uptake of knowledge, and a special section is dedicated to where to find it and to the online dissemination tools and design supporting tools. We have specifically mapped them, and we have identified 115 tools. So how to choose the platform where to put my NbS case studies, or what tools to use to support the design or the co-creation of my NbS. This is raising questions, which is important to be addressed. And we try to spend our 2 cents in describing this very large ocean. And we summarize and categorize this platform and tools according to the type of data which are contained in them, or the main societal challenges which are addressed by the case study reported in them, and so on. You can navigate and explore it. And specifically, a very large part of this guide is dedicated to how to choose the best platform to update your case studies in connection with what you have done in your case studies. And I will talk about it tomorrow. So going upward, and then finally success stories, because examples are a good part of dissemination and knowledge uptake. You can find some success story from the previous Biodiversa Plus NbS funded project, because you are here as founder under the BiodivNBS call, but we already have NbS projects in Biodiversa, of course. And we asked to those of them across different ecosystems, as you can see, which are the best way or the way they use to engage as much as possible stakeholders. And so if you want to get inspiration, you can find them exploring the guide that will be released soon. Similar approach is about the final guide on business and biodiversity. I will not spend so much words on it since I don't have it anymore, but the structure is basically the same. So you can find some very large landscape mapping that can help you, in particular in connection to mapping the knowledge gap and the tools and methods to assess impact and dependencies from business to biodiversity. Impact and dependencies, this is our approach in Biodiversa Plus. So please take a note about that. This will be released very, very soon. And it will be very important for those NbS researchers, which are large part of private sector involved in their project. Here also you can find success stories from previous Biodiversa Plus project about successful research and business collaboration across different ecosystems. Finally, my last slide, I told you before, is about the workshop. We want to explore this nexus in the next 3 years. How nature-based solutions can promote transformative change and vice versa. This has been the topic of a workshop that we organized recently in February in Oslo, and we have here some of the people that were present in there. And the content of the workshop will feed the report that will be released within 2025 that will present the position of Biodiversa Plus on this topic. But this is just the first step that will be further explored in the next 3 years. Since we have 2 calls, one on NbS and one on transformative change, which is going to close now, we do hope that the project will be involved in this discussion in the next years. So I thank you all. Here is finished my presentation. If you want to get in touch, here's my email address and the one of Lars Dinesen, which is the person that co-led with me this work package. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Chiara. One thing I didn't tell you is that we're going to group all the questions to the 3 presenters at the end of the session. So what we're going to do now is listen to Daniela. I mean, we all already know from Chiara that Daniela is going to talk about NetworkNature and mobilizing NbS hubs for upscaling NbS and supporting national restoration plans. So who is Daniela? She's a senior expert on biodiversity and nature-based solutions at ICLEI. And we talk about ICLEI so much, I forgot. The acronym is International Council of Local Environment Initiatives? No.
Yeah, we call it like it's a local government network.
Yeah, I know it is.
Local governments for sustainability is our
So the acronym doesn't fit the name.
No, it doesn't.
Just noticed. So sorry, and also you manage this project, EU-funded NetworkNature. You're going to talk about it, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Sybille, and thank you, Chiara. So I might have some touch points for the presentation before, but Chiara, and probably touching on some points from Val as well. So yeah, I just wanted to say that NetworkNature is a one-stop shop for the now, I think we are 94 NbS projects that are being funded as we speak here by the European Commission. And we try to have this one-stop shop so that people don't get overwhelmed into visiting all these 92 different websites, and try to actually show there the main resources, guidances, tools, etc. But it's not only that, because that will be a repository, and that's actually what OPLA does. You probably heard about OPLA before. So NetworkNature tries to do a little bit more than that and be actually this community for the nature-based solutions community to meet. And I'm going to talk about the task forces and the NbS hubs so that you can a little bit picture what is meant by this community getting together. This slide will change in, I think, 1 month. I heard from the REA, the Research Executive Agency. They're working on a new one. And so it's not 88 projects anymore. As I said, I think it's 94, 95. Then it's more than 850 million euros by now in research and innovation. And they actually span different areas, from education to water security to health and well-being, air quality, climate resilience, and so on. It's also interesting to mention the projects focusing on nature positive economy, insurance. Insurance sector plays a huge role in terms of pushing for NbS financing as well. So yeah. We try to bridge science, policy, and practice. Big thing to do. And the reason for this is that, of course, we notice that the more policies you have for nature-based solutions, the more opportunities for upscaling NbS you have. Because policies mean at the end of the day that you have funding lines and financing schemes for this. So it's very important. And of course, building capacity, building skills from actually different actors. Here, we're just mentioning because the slide is not big enough, but investors, society at large, but of course, public authorities, academics, and so on and so on. I'm going to talk a little bit about the hubs. So the NbS hubs, you're going to see here are just some of the logos for some of the hubs, but they're actually more than these that you're seeing displayed. They act, so our role as NetworkNature is to act a little bit as a coordinator for these different hubs. So in our annual events, save the date, 16th of September, this year in Brussels, all of you are very invited. We're going to bring together this community, and we try to do that not only in our annual events, but also during task force cluster meetings. We also try to couple them together when one can inspire the other, and connecting these hubs is important for us. And why hubs? Hubs are very important because they produce knowledge in local language. And local language doesn't mean only, the language itself, but also considering the different climatic zones and the different issues that each of these different regions represent. You're going to hear today from Mamuka. Mamuka is sitting here. He's working with the Caucasus Hub. And of course, if you have a Caucasus Hub, you're going to have very different realities and issues on the ground than from the Portuguese Hub and then from the Nordic Hub, right? So we want to support their uptake. I want to highlight here a little bit the NbS Italian hub, because it's really incredible what they are doing. They are going to do a summer school that is coming up very, very soon. And why I think it's important to mention them, they have the backup of the ministry. They have money coming from the authorities. So that's also one of the reasons why they can be so active. But they are trying to actually have a representation from the different task forces in that summer school and bringing the different topics to kind of, bring them to the ground and to local language as well. So that's really incredible. The Polish hub has also been doing similar things. So here you see some of the faces. Actually, we could have Chiara in the face of Carlo Calfapetra here. So it could be Chiara's photo in the middle, but you see here, and they're actually explaining here in their text is like, meet our hub, what are we doing? And you see here on the right side of the screen, actually the whole list. And of course, I'm not going to make it more as it is, because a lot of these hubs, they started during a NbS funded project. So they had the pumping of money at the time they were actually active. But then when the project ends, a lot of these hubs, they don't have, the possibilities to continue the work that they are doing. So that's also something that we have to think about, and I actually want to put in Biodiversa Plus heart. When you end in 2028, you build all this legacy. I know you're going to unpack hubs as well. Think about it. Can you already create, ways for them to either pack a university or have the buy-in of a ministry, so that they can outlive the project? I think that's an important point to raise. We can discuss it. Yeah, here you see a little bit bigger the map. You can screen the QR code and you're going to be, brought to the NbS Hub pages of NetworkNature. Each of them has a page. The idea was to put all the different outputs in local languages there. We're not there yet, but we have big dreams. We hope that this can still happen. I'm going to bring here this slide is from Susanna. Susanna was working with NetworkNature before, and now she is with DGRTD. So the Ukraine hub, I'm going to read that because I find it inspiring. Existing regulations on close to nature forestry do not cover all aspects of practical implementation. This visit offered a valuable opportunity to discuss various challenges and opportunities with the experienced team at Boyarka Forest. So what are they saying here? They identified the need for legislative amendments to better support these practices. So at the end of the day, these hubs, they actually kind of can even create momentum to inform policymaking on the ground in the region they are focusing on. And then there is another example, this one from the Italian hub with the Orti Generali, and they're really thinking about how they can impact more and more people that never heard the nature-based solutions word before. And even small-scale interventions are important, and they are trying to bring this to the fore even more. What is the relation with the national restoration plans? So as you know, the nature, oh, sorry, it should be nature restoration plan, not national, but they are national. So the nature restoration regulation, a lot of people say law, but correct is to say regulation, has been adopted in August last year. So we're actually at baby steps, I'm not gonna lie, right? So I was asked to present, what are the NbS hubs doing for the nature restoration regulation? I'm gonna be honest, we're not doing that much yet, but we do see a level of anxiety coming from, the countries, coming also from cities. Yeah, how are we going to make this work? How are we going to unpack this on the ground? And we're going to even hear there's a project that I was talking about here during the break that they're even like trying to understand the no net loss and how that translates, and the whole pressure for housing, and people are worried about other topics, and you want to, protect areas, derelict areas in the cities where you have spontaneous biodiversity unpacking. That is very important, but the pressure for land in cities is so huge. So one of the projects sitting here amongst you is investigating that, or will investigate that. I want to say that it is very important that we bring all the knowledge that we are actually gaining through participation in an expert group on the nature restoration regulation. We're also participating in another group from the European Commission called the Green Infrastructure Partnership that's being led by Ben Casper from DG Environment. They're thinking about metrics for urban ecosystems specifically. There is this Berlin Urban Nature Pact, also thinking about metrics, how to measure. So what we want to do is bring that down to the hubs and inform them, and actually help to, soothe a little bit this anxiety about how to make the nature restoration regulation work on the ground. And we see the hubs here as very important players, because they can, as I said in the slides before, they can influence local policies, but they can also inform where the policy is being, how can I say, where is it helping and where it's really a huge, huge challenge. And that conversation needs to happen, right? This is, thanks God, really a legally binding regulation. I know maybe there are some critics here. I was a huge proponent for this. I cried the day that this passed, you know, that hero Austrian minister actually saved the nature restoration regulation. And I must say, it's still very complicated how to unpack that on the ground. So, yeah, so we want to mention here the NbS Business Forum. This is an initiative from NetworkNature that is starting now to actually crystallize. Why? Because it's very important to understand what is the market for the nature restoration regulation. You will need companies to provide the services for ecosystem restoration. You would need companies to provide the tools, the sensors for the monitoring schemes. You will need a whole new market for this. So that's why it's also important to involve businesses in this whole discussion of the nature restoration. Also, in terms of the task forces, we have 6. These are the resources. So just for you to know a little bit how the platform works, we have an events calendar, we have a database of cases, we have the databases that Chiara mentioned before. There are actually 4 databases on knowledge gaps, on projects, but also there is a database in terms of policies that we have been putting. And you can see here the 6 policy themes. These are not, how do you say, all the policy themes of the work, but we had to focus on some of them. And what we're trying to do is to create a policy package for each of these topics to inform policymakers in terms of nature-based solutions and identify resources and services for them. Yeah, and tailor, you know, the services. And the task forces is the last thing that I'm going to say. I think it's very important to mention their work because we don't see the projects as islands. The projects, they should collaborate with one another. It's very important because, as we heard in the presentations in the morning, you get heard when you're not a voice alone. If you have a product, for example, as the one that was led by Laura Wendling from Task Force 2 in the past, you had 17 projects, or more than that, Laura? 17? More. 17 was the Task Force 3 one. It's a whole new game if you have so many projects backing up a resource. So yeah, the task force, I think this was a very interesting model for us in NetworkNature, and we want to make sure that they outlive the project, because they are actually pools of experts and knowledge, and we still have to be a little bit creative with our business plan, how to not let this die after NetworkNature ends in 2027. Yeah, so that's it. Happy to answer any questions, and other platforms out there. We're not the only one. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Daniela. So questions after the presentation. First, we listen to Valerie Kapos. And Valerie is a principal specialist in nature-based solution at the new UNEP-WCMC, which is the World Conservation and Monitoring Center. And she helps to oversee and provide strategic directions for the center's works on the role of ecosystems in climate change, adaptation and mitigation, and in health and well-being. Valerie, the floor is yours.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. I'm going to take a little bit of a step back and talk, yes, about some of the things that UNEP-WCMC does, but more about, if I can get out of Daniela and into me, more. And another one. There we go. So I want to focus in on climate change adaptation. And I was really pleased to see resilience in your list of, was it themes, was it task forces, was it something in NetworkNature? And I should say right up front, UNEP-WCMC is involved in NetworkNature, and really pleased to be so. And it's great to see all this resource coming out of Biodiversa Plus and NetworkNature and lots of other work by people in this room and beyond. But I want to take us back a little bit and think about this thing we keep saying scaling up. IUCN says scaling up. everybody says scaling up. We are all saying we need to do more of this. And we have a lot of talk about what's needed for that. I'm actually going to try to summarize some of that talk, but I'm also going to try to time myself so I don't get over enthusiastic. So I'm going to focus on adaptation. I'm not so much going to focus on restoration as the title in the program says, but I was too late to get that changed. I will say something about restoration, but not so much. So why am I talking about adaptation? Well, partly it's my job, but much more than that, we've finally reached a point where we're allowed to. In the first 10 years of my career working in climate change, if not more, it was really quite tricky to talk about adaptation because people were afraid that it would take attention away from mitigation. And finally, we've admitted that actually we really need to talk about adaptation. It's urgent. There's general recognition of the urgency. And there's a huge both need and opportunity to look at the role of nature in that. We've also had mention today, this afternoon, of the growing recognition of the links among the global crises. Again, probably everybody in this room has seen those links for years and years and years, but we're getting policy level, international, global scale recognition, which is going to make our lives easier. And that recognition's happening even under the Climate Change Convention, which is massive progress. So that's why we have to think about this. Obviously, nature-based solutions can contribute strongly to adaptation. I'm sure most of you know that. So there's widespread and growing interest, but there's also a little bit of sort of, okay, so I'm interested now, what do I do? And so I want to talk a little bit about where we need to go to try to support that. There's a bit of general context here because I wasn't sure who was going to say what before I did. And also because I've talked to enough audiences who've gone, oh yeah, biodiversity, climate change, it's all about carbon. And I'm the first person who sits on any platform and goes, no, it's not all about carbon. It's about hydrological regulation. It's about soil retention. It's about microclimate modification. It's about all sorts of things. So yes, adaptation is fantastically important. Nature has a lot to contribute. Examples include, and again, this audience knows this, but I want to flag one thing in this slide, and you'll see that a lot of my examples are not European, they're global, and that's to do with my background, and my apologies for my European colleagues, but live with it. But I do want to point out one thing in the wording of this slide, which is in the first bullet, the instead of or in addition to. And I think that's a really important point for us to be thinking about when we think about the scaling of nature-based solutions. We're quite prone, many of us, to say, do this instead of. Instead of concrete, use the green stuff. And often, actually, we've got a lot more progress that can be made by talking about in addition to. So I think we need to be careful about how we frame what we say, because we do actually put some of our colleagues and our audiences off if we're too absolute. I said I would have a restoration example. I also said I'm not talking about Europe. And this is also a debatably good practice NbS, but I want to flag this. You're looking at the Itaipu hydroelectric dam. This one. I don't think I did it. It's on the border between Brazil and Paraguay. It provides a huge percentage of the electricity of Paraguay and about 15% of the electricity used in Brazil. It's a hydroelectric dam, and it was built in the 80s, and there are all sorts of issues about how well they considered impacts on local stakeholders, indigenous people. There are all sorts of problems with it. It is not necessarily a perfect nature-based solution. My point about this is that it's not a perfect nature-based solution, but it's an evidence source, okay? One of the things we need is more and more evidence that people can understand and quantify about how nature-based solutions might work if they were done well. And we can get that evidence, indeed, from nature-based solutions that are done well, but we can also get that evidence from work that was done not with nature-based solutions in mind at all. Itaipu Binacional started life trying to restore forests so that its reputation would stay pretty, and subsequently discovered that, lo and behold, by restoring forests, they had stabilized their water supplies, They had reduced soil erosion. They had therefore reduced the sedimentation of the reservoir and prolonged its life. And they had increased the length of life of their turbines because there wasn't sediment in the water scratching up the turbines. They have since done a whole economic evaluation that shows that, and it shows that the 101,000 hectares of forest that they've either conserved or restored is worth some $45 million, NPV a couple of years ago. Okay? They didn't do it necessarily for the right reasons to start with. It doesn't mean it's not a good source of evidence. Okay, and I really do think that's an important lesson for this audience and beyond this room, that we need to get the evidence wherever we can find it. Whoops, I've just lost my clock so somebody else can wave at me. This is a general point. This comes back, this is from, good Lord, almost a decade ago. The Global Commission on Climate Change Adaptation, we did a background paper. Main point here is we're talking about specific climate hazards and specific ecosystems. NbS have a role to play all across those, include cities. We all know this in this room, but I want to make the point about matching up to hazards and being really quite explicit about what the objectives of the NbS, and they can be multiple, they're not really single, but what the objectives of the NbS we're advocating for are, and how it is that they might best be implemented to achieve those specific objectives. So, challenges. I said I was going to go general. Here's general. We know about the lack of awareness and recognition of NbS potential. That's why we're all in this room. It's why we've got all these fantastic projects mobilizing all this information. We also know that there's a gap in understanding the effectiveness of NbS, and that's a real problem. It's also a real problem for adaptation beyond NbS. Okay, assessing adaptation effectiveness is one of the great challenges. It's not peculiar to NbS. And we need not to have a complex about the fact that we struggle to demonstrate adaptation effectiveness for NbS, because it's true for all adaptation interventions. So let's not have a complex. But we do need to understand about evidence gaps. I'm not quite sure whether evidence gaps are the same as knowledge gaps. And we need to talk about whether those gaps are real or they're just perceived. And I think that's, again, a really important point for this community. We need to, if we're going to talk about scale, we need to help people think about how to express aggregate impact. Most NbS happen at site scale. How do we help policymakers and others put those together to say, this is what we've achieved by doing NbS? We're not very good at that. I don't have the answers, but I think with the minds in this room and beyond, we can get to it. I didn't see the number on that. 5, fine, I'm in good shape. And I've already said something about long-term effectiveness. Absolutely fundamental, increasingly fundamental, is the awareness that no matter how well we mean, we can have adverse impacts on stakeholders. And we absolutely need to find the best ways to get over that. And I'll come back to that in a minute. Sectoral silos. One of the major things we say about NbS is that they have multiple benefits. They deliver on all sorts of objectives. But if the people who care about those objectives are sitting in different sectoral silos and they're not engaged in the conversation, you're losing that advantage that's provided by those multiple benefits and multiple objectives. So I guess another message here is about breaking down those silos. I'm going to come back to that in a second. There's a capacity gap and a gap between disciplines, and we did some work with the Inter-American Development Bank several years ago in which one of our major conclusions was that if somebody would just teach engineers about NbS, the engineers would really help us evaluate effectiveness because that's what they're good at. And we would get increased uptake of NbS, particularly in development sector projects. Access to money, I'm sure we're going to talk about that a lot more in the next couple of days. But actually the valuation question, both costs and benefits, is huge. And we need to be much better about thinking about that while we're thinking about all of the nice natural science we want to do. We really have to get the economic side of this right. And in some cases, competition for land and space and resources is something we need to recognize so that we can help decision makers prioritize. This is sort of course, the converse of what the challenges are. I want to pick up on a couple of things. One is that as a community, particularly to support, weirdly, we don't think about this as decision support, and it actually is. which is we need to get a lot better at monitoring and evaluation for NbS interventions, and that's particularly true for adaptation. We also need to get better at assessing climate risks to NbS effectiveness. It's great to say NbS are fantastic for climate resilience, but if they're not resilient themselves, we've got a little bit of a problem. And we now do have the tools to do that, but we don't do it very often. So I think that's something we really need to look at. I've mentioned stakeholders and adverse impacts. This is not new territory, and we have a huge amount of experience from mitigation and all the work that's been done on safeguards in implementing mitigation actions for climate change. I think there's a lot to draw on. We should use it. Capacity and tools. I can up your number of tools, Chiara. We have a tools navigator for ecosystem-based adaptation, which we put together. It's got 275 in it. The point about that one is there are tools out there that we weren't made for NbS that can still be used for NbS. And let's take advantage of them, and let's help people understand how they've been used. So it's not just about putting the tools in databases, it's about putting the experience of using the tools in databases. And I think that's something we can helpfully do. And this is something that Daniela touched on, the final point here on identifying links to current policy and fostering coherence across sectors. Let's help policymakers understand what it is that the evidence we're producing means for the things that are already in place. We're all busy advocating for new policies, that's great, but they have commitments under international agreements. Could it be the CBD? Yes, but much beyond the CBD that they need to meet, and NbS can help them do that. And so I think we need to be making those points. I don't think I want to talk about this. This is very much more at the practitioner level, except to flag the importance of two things. Involving consulting and co-designing with stakeholders and making adaptation objectives explicit. If you don't make your objectives explicit, you can't have robust monitoring and evaluation, and you can't deliver the evidence that we need to support people to make decisions to use NbS for those purposes. I'm going to skip that one, and I'm just going to flag this, which somebody else has already flagged, and so I don't need to talk about it in any detail. But I do want to flag the overall conclusion from this one. This is the Biodiversa study on NbS and transformative change. And the overall conclusion from this was that the evidence isn't quite there yet. And I also want to say that in my personal view, don't attribute it to the organization, we as much need systemic transformative change so that NbS will be implemented as we do, as we can. That's at least as important as trying to expect that NbS will generate transformative change. Both of those things are needed. The evidence on whether NbS will deliver or whether the systemic change is going to happen is still out. There's so much work that's going to give us that evidence. It's just the evidence isn't yet in place, so keep publishing, guys. I think I'll stop there. This one's on.
Sorry about this. One of the mics is low on battery. I don't know if the technicians hear me. Thank you. We have a few minutes for questions, so floor is open to questions. Yes, there is a lady up there. Is your mic working? Did you test it? Last, yeah, second to last row.
Hi, first of all, thanks Valerie, Daniela, and Chiara for the very valuable presentations. I think you mentioned very interesting topics, and I would connect a bit both before I ask my questions. So Chiara mentioned a bit about the knowledge gaps that are trying to be assessed. And then Daniela mentioned the importance of having hubs, discussions, and knowledge addressed in local languages, which is key, I guess. And Valerie then brought some examples from outside of Europe. And then I was wondering, I know we are having a discussion about Europe, focused on Europe, but biodiversity is a global topic. So I would ask you how you see that the Global South could be more engaged in this conversation, and even considering the knowledge gap that Chiara brought, I think we have a great production of knowledge being made in the Global South. Even though we have very different landscapes, I think it would be very valuable to have knowledge made elsewhere in this table. And this, of course, will bring different worldviews because we think and live different worlds in a way. But I guess it would be very interesting to consider that. Thank you.
Do you want to comment on this?
I don't know if that works, but yeah. Thanks for asking this. This is actually one of my favorite topics. I'm Brazilian, Italian. So you can imagine how I try to, bring the Global South voices to the Global North. Yeah, I think that in these European funded projects, more and more you have projects that are looking into, the epistemic knowledge, and how, you have, themes related to the colonialism of knowledge and, bringing up the voices. So there is one project that I would like to mention here is the Connexus project. It was a project where we had cities from South America. There is some people from the Connexus project here. Giovanna is here. And there was one publication, but actually many publications, but one of them touched my heart. It was even written by a colleague of mine, where she does a really big provocation about the term nature-based solutions, and actually how in the Global South people have been working with this, but framing it differently. And she goes into even religion, and she goes into indigenous communities, but also Black communities. And she brings all of that, to the fore, to the discussion, and how, knowledge, actually, we have to be careful not to colonize knowledge to the Global South. And maybe another project that I would like to mention is Go Nature Positive. And that project has one pilot in Colombia, and we were actually with that project in Cali last year. And one thing that we really noticed is that the European project leaders from Ireland, from the Trinity College Dublin, they were mind blown in Cali about how many initiatives from Africa and from Latin America actually are already having very interesting financing schemes for nature-based solutions. And she was like, oh my God, we actually have to come here, sit and listen and learn from them. Creative schemes that Europe can only dream of, these guys are already doing on the ground. So yeah, and I think we always have to talk about knowledge exchange, never about knowledge transfer. Yeah.
What Daniela said, but besides that, I think I would like to emphasize the exchange point and also the worldviews point which the questioner raised, because people have been doing NbS for centuries. Okay, it's not new. What's new is trying to mainstream it and think about it, and actually trying to optimize what NbS can deliver in terms of the demands across people's worlds. So I think the point is extremely well taken. We are seeing more and more exchange, and I use that word intentionally, North-South exchange and South-South exchange, and those things are incredibly important. So thank you very much for raising the question.
Not so much to add to what they already say. Thanks for the question. I just would like to get, yes, when you travel across the several list of knowledge gaps that exist, yes, of course, extending the concept to Global South with all the constraints that we have just discussed, it's always present. And indeed, at least one of the projects which has been founded under the BiodivNBS call, it's about Global South I apologize, I don't remember the name, but there are at least one. So also Biodiversa Plus, it's now taking care to this aspect.
We will solve the mic issue during break. One last question. Yes, the gentleman up there.
Yes, hello. You mentioned also engineers, and I could add architects, yeah. So my question would be that we struggle when we try to implement this is, are there any building codes or standards that could be used for engineers on the European level so that the playing field is the same for all the companies? Because we see, you know, that they really need really exact and structured guidance on this. So how to approach this on the national and also on the European level?
I'm going to start and not speak specifically to the European level and then pass on to the others. I'm glad you noticed my engineer's point. And part of my point about that is that for years we've been asking ecologists to tell us how much we need in the way of mangrove to protect us from certain kinds of coastal hazards. Engineers know how to do that. So I think I would actually turn your question about standards back to you, to how can we engage with those communities to get them to help us, or to get them indeed to develop those standards. Because if you ask an ecologist, they will tell you all about all the variation in the local context and how terribly difficult it is to say anything about how much mangrove you need. But if you give an engineer the question about, that's what they do. They work out how much concrete and how tall and wide and strong a seawall needs to be. I use that as the standard example. That's what they do. They can solve the mangrove problem. They just haven't been asked. And I think that those communities themselves are in a good position to generate standards, but they need us to help them clarify the question and the conditions and the contexts. But we need to be working together. We shouldn't be seeing that as something separate.
Yeah, maybe just to say, I read that in the flight. I should not have, but in the flight coming here, that we should think yes and not yes but. And a lot of time we are here in a conversation with engineers, yes, but, no, yes and try to think collaborative with them, right? And thinking about the standards, of course, building codes are already set. They're already translated in many different countries. And for nature-based solutions, we're still not there. There is, apart from the IUCN global standards, there is actually guidelines for you to test if what you're doing is really NbS and to what extent it's NbS. There's also the CEN, which is the European Committee for Standards, that is putting together now a nomenclature on nature-based solutions. And there are many different, countries involved in this. And the next step will be NetworkNature is facilitating that these NbS projects bring the outcomes to create CWAs, which is like a workshop agreement, which is a, let's say, simplified format of a standard, because they have to do it during the duration of the project. And that can give, the step to build standards. And it's related to ISO as well. But for nature-based solutions, I'm not meaning it for biodiversity, for NbS really. So we have to get there. And I must tell you, like working with UNEP-WCMC, they lead our work package 4 in NetworkNature. And they are putting up now a report. And it's very, very difficult to get the private sector to jump in. We know from the negotiations from Rome, from the last COP, the parties will not put the money to save biodiversity. We desperately need the private sector to jump in. But if we don't have sturdy metrics and harmonized metrics to measure the impacts, and they won't, they're starting to understand what TNFD, their dependencies, the risks, they're starting more and more, but we still have, this community should be actually working on metrics. And I would say that is actually the weakest part of our 92 projects. thinking self-reflectively. And I would say that you and your actually, like a big gap is sturdy metrics. And we might have some of them, but they are not harmonized. And then we need to bring them down to different climates. And, you know, biodiversity and NbS is so complex because we're talking about 12 societal challenges, but we need to use all this, you know, apparatus to create these metrics. Otherwise, the private sector will not jump in at the speed we need also.
Yes, and just to add, in connection with this, yet that for sure there are aspects connected with nature-based solution for which metrics works, which is, for instance, carbon assessment, okay? While there are aspects or flooding risks, or flammability indexes, and so on. And there are other aspects which are not so easy to handle, which is biodiversity. Here we are, and this is why we are here. So one of the main challenges this, and that's why Biodiversa Plus can play a role in this connection, because we have this very large group of people working on measuring and metrics and assessment of biodiversity. And we are also working on NbS. And exactly, I think that this is one of the main points that we are now.
Thank you. We're going to close this session with a coffee break, nature-based coffee. And please come back at 3 sharp. We will start sharp. But first, I'd like you to thank the speakers again, because they're good friends.
Yes, and before we leave, I have two quick messages. So, you know, there are going to be some guided tours today in the evening and tomorrow. And if you are registered for one of them, you should have one small lovely sticker behind your name tags. If you don't have it, please go and ask for one at the registration desk, because this will represent in which guided tour you will be joining. And another quick reminder, if you have taken one of these recyclable plastic cups, please don't forget to bring it back at the end of the day. Thank you.
So shall we start, Osman? Okay, welcome back, everyone. Thanks for being on time-ish. The next session is a duet, as I said, by the European Commission, and we're very happy to have Bénédicte Blaudeau here. She works at DG Environment of the European Commission, and her colleague, Susanna Gionfra, who's in DG Research and Innovation, and she's in the biodiversity nature-based solution, well, in the bigger unit on planetary boundaries, and I don't remember the whole universe, but she's working on biodiversity and nature-based solution. So Bénédicte is going to start.
Thank you. So we will give an overview of nature-based solutions in the context of EU policy priorities and what the EU does to support scaling up of nature-based solutions in policy and through research and capacity building. So that's it, and that's us. Yes, so I will start with a general context and also the global context, but going quickly because a lot has already been touched on. And then looking into the EU biodiversity strategy, and then more into some latest policy developments, and also mentioning the new European Bauhaus and the LIFE program. And then I will give the floor to Susanna for the research and innovation policy and Horizon Europe in more detail. Not clicking strongly enough. So you've already seen it today, but I just started by recalling the multilaterally agreed definition of NbS, actions to protect, conserve, restore, sustainably use and manage natural or modified terrestrial, freshwater, coastal and marine ecosystems, addressing social, economic and environmental challenges, while providing human well-being, ecosystem services, resilience and biodiversity benefits. And so this is, of course, embedded in the approach of the European Green Deal, and particularly integrated in the EU Biodiversity Strategy for 2030 and the EU Climate Adaptation Strategy. But also on a global level, of course, in the Global Biodiversity Framework, but also the Paris Agreement and Sustainable Development Goals, so with which the EU biodiversity strategy is aligned. But of course, NbS are also cross-cutting, and they are supported across other policies and programs. So we can think of the Common Agricultural Policy, the Common Fisheries Policy. And so going to the EU Biodiversity Strategy, the EU Biodiversity Strategy aims to secure healthy, resilient, biodiversity-rich ecosystem that deliver a range of services essential to the prosperity and well-being of citizens, and nature-based solutions are at the core of the approach of the EU Biodiversity Strategy. So it was already recalled this morning by Magnus, but the EU Biodiversity Strategy is structured around 4 pillars: protecting nature, restoring nature, enabling transformative change, and global action. And so you have here an overview of key targets of the EU Biodiversity Strategy, and you can as well also consult the action tracker and dashboard to view the project progress to the targets. But just to recall, so on nature protection, the target of protecting a minimum of 30% of the EU land and sea, strictly protecting 1/3 of the EU's protected area, and strictly protecting primary and old growth forests, and effectively managing protected area. On restoration, so the main achievement was the legally binding targets of the nature restoration law that were announced in the EU Biodiversity Strategy. But there's also promotion of agroecology, a series of actions on soil, health of soil and sustainable soil management, on forests. And then on forest, there's also the EU Forest Strategy, which goes into more details on the actions for forests to increase the quantity, quality, and resilience of EU forests for multifunctional and resilient forests. And as well as the 3 Billion Trees Initiative, which aims to plant additional trees in full respect of ecological principles. Nature-based solutions for urban areas are particularly strongly identified in the EU Biodiversity Strategy, and the support for urban greening and green infrastructure. The restoration of marine ecosystem and the tackling bycatch and seabed damage, the restoration of carbon-rich ecosystem is highlighted, the restoration of freshwater ecosystems with the target of restoring at least 25,000 kilometers of rivers into free-flowing rivers by 2030. And in the enablers of transformative change, so we have explicitly here the aim of bridging science, policy, and practice, and making nature-based solutions on the ground. And one of the main actions was actually the Biodiversa Plus partnership. So this is also how we deliver on NbS. And as well, the EU Knowledge Center for Biodiversity, the KCBD, and EU support to the IPBES process. I imagine I can go quite fast on the nature restoration regulation. We already mentioned it, but just to say again, the overarching target of putting restoration measures in place on at least 20% of land and sea areas by 2030, and in on all ecosystems in need of restoration by 2050, as well as a list of specific requirements for different ecosystems. And so core to the approach of the nature restoration regulation is this idea of ensuring synergies with the climate change mitigation and adaptation, but also food security, water management, and so on. So the NbS approach is also core here. So now going to the current political context. This is an overview of Europe's choice, so the new political guidelines of the Commission for the 2024 to 2029 mandate. And as well in the mission letters to the commissioners, it is highlighted that the EU must stay on course of the European Green Deal, but focus on implementation and incentives, and as well ensure we reach our international commitments. You have 7 key priorities, so competitiveness, defense and security, EU social fairness, quality of life, food security, water and nature, democracy and values, global Europe, and reform and preparing the future. And the the headings that are most relevant for research and biodiversity are the competitiveness and quality of life headings. And there we can note, and notably under the competitiveness priority, that the Clean Industrial Deal that was still since published was announced under the objectives of putting research and innovation at the heart of the economy. A new European Biotech Act was announced, which will be part of a broader strategy on European life sciences. And then regarding quality of life, the vision of agriculture, which was since presented as well, the importance of rewarding farmers who work with nature, the European Ocean Pact, the European Water Resilience Strategy, and the work again on incentives for nature positive actions, in particular in developing nature credits, which is quite relevant to a lot of the conversations we were having. So this is an overview of the competitiveness compass, which was presented building on the report on competitiveness that was presented by Mario Draghi. And it has 3 pillars to boost European competitiveness: closing the innovation gap, decarbonizing our economy, reducing dependencies, and then a series of horizontal enablers. And so you have here an overview of the different actions, flagship actions under each pillar. And so we can note some I already mentioned. So Life Science Strategy, Biotech Act, revision of the EU Bioeconomy Strategy under the Innovation pillar, the Circular Economy Act, the Vision for Agriculture and Food, and the Ocean Pact under the Decarbonization pillar. And under the Security and Dependencies pillar, the European Climate Adaptation Plan, the Water Resilience Strategy. And so this is what I was saying. The vision for agriculture and food has already been presented, as well as the Clean Industrial Deal. And then you can also have a look at the Commission Work Programme for 2025 for the initiatives that are coming up the fastest. And so now I wanted to take a moment to mention the new European Bauhaus. So the new European Bauhaus is an initiative that was launched under the European Green Deal. And it's a policy and funding initiative to make a green transition and build environment enjoyable, attractive, and convenient for all, promoting solutions that are sustainable, inclusive, and beautiful. So this is, of course, relevant also to nature-based solutions in the built environment. It was a cross-cutting initiative, so across different policies and programs. It notably has prizes, built a community, has a series of tools. We were talking about architects, so you can find some guidance on NEB self-assessment and so on under the NEB. And with the new commission, the ambition on the new European Bauhaus is renewed, and NEB facility roadmap was launched. So the NEB facility for 2025 to 2027 is a multi-annual funding tool for the new European Bauhaus. And you have here how it will work and the novelty. So it will offer funding opportunities for projects to revitalize neighborhoods with 3 specific objectives. So transforming places with community, supporting innovation and enabling change, and 2 components, so research and innovation components and a rollout component. And the research and innovation component will get funding from Horizon Europe at an estimated 120 million per year, with the 3 themes of connecting the green transformation, social inclusion, and local democracy, circular and regenerative approaches for the built environment, and innovative funding and new business models for the built environment for transformative impact. And the rollout component will build support on the ground to scale up and deploy innovative solutions. And to finish, I was mentioning that NbS are relevant across programs, so we will go more into details on Horizon Europe, but I wanted to mention the LIFE program, which is the EU's funding instrument for the environment and climate action that has existed for more than 30 years. And its ambition is to support the green transition, propose a holistic approach under the idea that environment, climate, and energy actions have co-benefits, and it finances nature-based solutions across its policy areas, so nature and biodiversity, circular economy, zero pollution, climate change adaptation, and mitigation. It has a bottom-up approach and supports ambitious and innovative projects across the EU. And actually, the next call will be published very soon, so end of April. So for you to keep in mind, all types of actors can apply, research institute, national authorities, private entities, and so on. And here you have a few examples of live projects on nature-based solution. So in the water sector, restoration of river integrity, urban environment with stormwater management in Estonia, coastal and marine environment, here an example from Italy on restoring oyster reefs, and agri-food sector with different alternating agricultural and forest crops. And I will stop here and give the floor to Susanna for Research and Innovation Policy in Horizon Europe.
Bénédicte, and hello, everyone. So I will now continue this presentation to focus a bit more on the research and innovation side, but also on capacity building efforts from the European Commission. So I believe you have already seen this slide. Someone actually presented the exact same slide before. But just to reiterate the importance that the European Commission has been giving to nature-based solutions, as we truly believe that they are very important innovations and solutions to tackle the climate and biodiversity crisis, also with many co-benefits for society. So these numbers that you see here are actually from an infographic that was produced by REA, the Research and Executive Agency of the European Commission, and it dates back to December 2024, so it's quite recent, yet not fully updated, so that actually the numbers are a bit higher right now, but it's updated regularly. So in December 2024, we already had 88 projects funded on research and innovation on nature-based solutions, with a lot of partners across different countries, amounting to 755 million euros. And these projects cover a wide range of ecosystems, actually across all ecosystems, so from terrestrial, marine, and freshwater. There was a lot of effort put on the urban environments, but not only, and you can actually see this categorization in the infographic. And then regarding the sort of societal challenges that these projects on NbS have been addressing, you can see them here. I think one you can't see very well, but these are 12 societal challenges that we kind of identified in the EU as being addressed through nature-based solutions. So of course, by definition, nature-based solutions are bringing benefits to biodiversity and human well-being, but should also address one or more societal challenges that you can see here. And in the 88 projects that I mentioned that you can find in the QR code there, we have seen a lot of focus on climate resilience. So really on those societal challenges that are about climate resilience, climate adaptation, something that has been mentioned already before. So you can find a bit more information on that in the infographic. And then just to continue talking about Horizon Europe, so nature-based solutions are also identified under the Horizon Europe strategic plan for 2025 and 2027. From 2025 to 2027, specifically in cluster 6. So that's the cluster about food, bioeconomy, natural resources, agriculture, and environment. And in particular, so this means that there is an expected impact on biodiversity, and that research innovation is also expected to analyze the environmental and economic and social impacts of nature-based solutions and the mechanisms to scale these solutions up. Right now, work is ongoing in relation to the preparation of the Horizon Europe work plans for 2025, but also for 2026 and 2027. So I don't have specific dates to give you, but I can already inform you that for Cluster 6, the info days are planned for the 21st and 22nd of May online. So you can join that to have more information on the topics. And last thing to say on this is that there is an objective, a current objective to mainstream biodiversity more within Horizon Europe. And so there is a current target for the work plan, for the strategic plan for 2025 to 2027 to have 10% biodiversity funding through Horizon. And then going forward, we have seen the results of this HETER report, which is actually an external expert report providing recommendations on the future funding program. And there they are recommending to more effectively address societal challenges such as biodiversity loss, climate change, planetary boundaries, and health. Having said this, of course, funding in relation to nature-based solutions and biodiversity go beyond this. Of course, other clusters of Horizon can be explored, but also the new European Bauhaus that was mentioned by Bénédicte, Biodiversa Plus, of course, and so on. And of course, the EU missions as well. So if for those of you who are not so familiar with the EU missions, basically beyond, well, I very little left. Beyond research and innovation, they really focus on implementation on the ground. So there's a lot of opportunities for nature-based solutions. In fact, they do feature in these missions, especially these 4. We have so far about 20 NbS projects that are implemented through the mission, the EU missions. When we talk about research and innovation outputs in the EU, we cannot avoid talking about NetworkNature. This is something that has been presented before already, so I will not take too long, but I think it's a great opportunity for building and expanding this community around nature-based solutions, bringing together different actors, but also for building capacities. And these are the 3 main features that I want to mention for capacity building. The resources, case studies, and events that you can find on the platform, the NbS Hubs that Daniela presented just before, so these kind of national regional collaborations around nature-based solutions, and the NbS task forces that are clustering of representatives of EU NbS projects across 6 transversal topics around nature-based solutions. And the big added value of NetworkNature is that it's really bringing together all those projects, those 88 projects, that are actually more now that I mentioned before, but of course it doesn't stop there, like it doesn't have to stop there. And this is one key point that I wanted to make for this presentation of linking and finding synergies between all these initiatives that have at the end mission in common. So in the framework of NetworkNature, I also wanted to mention this database of NbS research and innovation projects that actually was put together by Biodiversa, who is a partner in the project, and it was recently expanded. So it was a huge amount of work to really provide this overview that I invite you all to check out. It now contains 471 projects dating from 2011 to 2024. Focused on nature-based solutions and funded through different programs. So Horizon 2020, Horizon Europe, but also LIFE, Interact, Biodiversa Plus, and all these other that are mentioned here, Water for All, and so on. And it actually gets to over 2 billion euros allocated to NbS research, innovation, and implementation projects. So you can use this as a resource to, it's not exhaustive, of course, because things have happened since then, but it's definitely a good place to go and check out what's been funded so far on nature-based solutions. And of course, I want to mention Biodiversa Plus because, of course, and the kickoff happening tomorrow, in particular, the BiodivNBS call, and the aim was really to support transnational research projects which contribute to promoting nature-based solutions. So these 34 projects that have been selected, amounting to over 40 million euros from national and regional funding organizations and the European Commission. And with this, I just want to conclude with this one slide, which is more of a call to action, let's put it that way, to remind ourselves that we are all contributing to the same nature-based solutions community in one way or another. There are so many initiatives, so many projects that are different per se, but complementary in a way. And so the idea is really not to do things separately, but to do them together because the mission is the same. And so initiatives such as NetworkNature or Biodiversa Plus should really be brought together. And there are different opportunities to do that. The European Commission is really committed to identify and notify all these opportunities, but it's also a call to action for projects and initiatives to speak up, to disseminate and communicate your work, because that's the way we achieve impact. And this is a nice visualization I always want to show, produced by NetworkNature. It's a visualization of what NbS are. It has all the ecosystems, all the societal challenges, and you see that people are an important element there. So it's not just nature. So, thanks.
Thank you very much. So thank you for these presentations. Hopefully the short-term priorities of security and competitiveness will not take Green Deal too far down the drain, but the jury is still out. Any questions or comment? Osman is checking online. Yes.
Many thanks for the presentations. You mentioned the planetary boundaries, which I think is interesting, and how or if planetary boundaries can be used in relation to nature-based solutions, trying to steer that we are contributing to some of the global goals. I mean, many things can be nature-based solutions, but how do we know if we really steer in the right direction at the global level and are not exceeding these planetary boundaries? That's one. And then I have another one on the Nexus element, the Nexus report from IPBES, if you know it, where you're talking about these 5 Nexus elements. And I also is a bit puzzled on how that linked to the concept of nature-based solutions. We have not talked so much about health here, but that's one of the Nexus elements, which are all interlinked. So when you do something on one of the Nexus elements, you actually influence all the others. So you need to kind of reach a balance among these Nexus elements of water, climate change, health, food production, and what was the last one? Whatever, there is one I've forgotten. Thank you.
Yeah. Did you want? I can. Okay, I give it a try. It's not an easy question. The first part of your question, but I mean the EU biodiversity strategy and the EU goals are aligned with the global ones, and actually even the work on the reporting and the tracking and the indicators on progress to targets is then linked to the reporting that the EU also has to do for the implementation of the Global Biodiversity Framework. So and a report to the CBD. So that's one aspect, maybe not as conceptual, but a concrete aspect. And then on health, I think this is very relevant. I think some projects already tackle this. I think, I mean, I have in mind like an example on restoration, where the mental health and physical health aspect is also taken into account, and there's quite a lot on research also on pandemic prevention and so on. And this is also something where Biodiversa Plus is as delivered, and so there is research, and then the Nexus assessment and the IPBES process also feed into the identification of research needs for future projects. So this is also something we are taking into account. This is, so I agree, relevant, very relevant.
Yeah, I can just add, yeah, in relation to planetary boundaries, these are of course a relevant framework. Let's put it that way to consider when doing NbS. But I think for the nature of these solutions, it's specifically about ecological thresholds that need to be respected, and that's simply for the type of implementation that these do. But of course, it's something that that has to be checked, especially when doing nature-based solutions that have a climate impact or they are reducing they're reducing energy consumption or so on. So it's something to for which it can be contributed to. And in relation to these other nexus areas that you mentioned, and Bénédicte said it, a lot of projects are dealing with this. Of course, you can't really do NbS that solves everything. You can't do NbS for health and for water, and ideally you can, but the idea of nature-based solutions and the fact they are context-specific and localized is that you really assess what the need is, what the challenge is, and how that solution can actually support in there. So it's targeted in a way, and then there are additional co-benefits that can be achieved. So there are some projects that you can also find in that infographic. There is a part on health that's dealing exactly with nature-based solutions that, of course, bring about the biodiversity benefits that they have to bring, but also specifically focus on the health benefits and also on the mental health benefits, with important evidence being produced there. And then, of course, the co-benefits are also there, and those can be wider in other areas. And that's, of course, just an example, and it's the same for the rest. But they have to be quite targeted to be effective, in my opinion.
Thank you. We're going to have to close the discussion here because we're running late. So I'd like you to thank the speakers again. And I invite the 4 panelists to come on stage while I'm going to introduce the panel. So Nicolas, Lovisa, Chiara, and Mamuka. While they are taking a seat, this panel is going to be about national experiences of either environmental protection agencies or environmental ministries on the use of nature-based solutions for better policy making and implementation. And the way we're going to do this is that I'm going to introduce our guests here, but then they're going to have, we will ask them 3 questions, and they will answer each to the 3 questions. Then we'll have a Q&A session with you, and then they will have a minute of concluding by giving us their striking moment of the discussion. So the panel, we have Nicolas Laurent over there, and he's the biodiversity coordinator for Europe and international affairs in the Water and Biodiversity Directorate of the French Ministry for the Ecological Transition, Biodiversity, Forest, Marine Affairs, and Fisheries, and the whole universe. And he contributes to advancing the French biodiversity policy in European and international forums, particularly by promoting NbS. So that's Nicolas. We have Lovisa Lagerblatt, and she's working at the Swedish EPA, and she's experienced in the field of sustainable urban planning and with a particular interest in climate adaptation. So she must have been very happy with the presentation before, and also multifunctional solutions. Then we have from Italy, Chiara Catalano, and she is from the Italian National Research Council and the Italian hub we heard about earlier today for nature-based solutions. And she's a researcher in the Italian National Research Council and the Biodiversity Future Center, and she's member of the coordination group of the Italian hub. And she likes to focus on NbS uptake strategies. And then we have Mamuka here, Gvilava. He told me his language is really easy, but for me, as a French speaker, putting a V after a G is quite hard, but Gvilava. And so he's from Geographic, it's a GIS-RS Consulting Center in Georgia. He's the co-founder of the Caucasus National Nature-Based Solution Hub, which was launched with Armenia in 2019, I understand, and Armenia and Georgia, of course. And he works on integrating NbS into spatial planning and other strategic documents in Georgia. And he promotes also the application of NbS in coastal and marine domains. And we don't hear enough about coastal and marine domains, so I wanted to stress that. Okay.
Physicist.
The other physicist. No, so that's three of us already. Physicists. Sorry, I'm trying to tell. So first question, and we can take it in whatever order you want. How do you deal with the challenges of implementation and scaling up of NbS? Do you have some practical or some best practice to share? So Nicolas, you want to start?
Okay, yeah. First of all, thank you for this invitation. It's a great pleasure to be here in the name of the Ministry of Environment. I'm not going to give the whole name again. It's a great pleasure to be here and to see so many people mobilized, motivated by nature-based solutions. And it's a real motivation for us too within the ministry and with our all partners. So regarding the first question, I wrote down a few notes because I know we have to respect the time. But to address these challenges, first of all, we need to integrate them into national public policies, of course. So for the French example, we have integrated NbS into frameworks such as the National Plan for Adaptation to Climate Change, the third one having just been published, or the National Biodiversity Strategy. This integration into policy frameworks gives more legitimacy to these nature-based solutions. Then the second point is about sharing best practices, and to do so, well, especially through projects such as the Life Artisan, which is a French project about nature-based adaptation solutions. France promotes concrete examples of NbS and rewards public and private actors on their innovative projects. So that's a real example of sharing best practices. Then there's also the financial support. We talked about it. And for effective scaling, France provides financial support, both at the national and international levels. So for instance, at the international level, our Multilateral Development Bank, the AFD, funds projects in vulnerable countries, all right, and national calls for projects in order to provide support in most vulnerable countries. Then there's the monitoring, which is the one I want to emphasize, because we need to evaluate NbS outcomes through socio-ecological monitoring and analysis. And this allows us to demonstrate the effectiveness and make favorable comparisons with traditional solutions, especially regarding long-term resilience of NbS. And then we need to engage with local communities. But to sum up, scaling up NbS involves integrating them into public policies at some point, whatever framework, but the most is the best. And then provide targeted financial support and disseminate best practices while having ongoing evaluations to address the fact that we still need to advocate in favor of these solutions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nicolas. So we go line like this, okay?
Okay, so we go with the line now with the presentation order, perfect. So yes, thanks for the invitation, and I'm very glad to be here, finally meeting people in person, also knowing, connecting face and names. I have to say, after being living in Switzerland for 10 years, I have the feeling to be like in a bubble. So because it's outside Europe. So finally I'm back to Europe and also back to know the people within this room, which is a great opportunity. So back to the question, considering the challenge and how to solve them or how to tackle them at the national level via the hub. So first of all, maybe emphasizing the challenges. So what I consider to be the challenge is the knowledge information sharing. So where to find information, which information are relevant, because I have the feeling, well, not only I have the feeling, but the feeling is that people are very detached from what NbS is, because there are misconceptions, they're very expensive, they're high costly maintenance effort. And all this kind of information need to be, of course, bridged. So to focus back, information, resources, data, and effectiveness. All this information need to be shared among people, not only among researchers, to, of course, create and write policies. And the hub should have actually this role. So to bring all this knowledge down to people, associations, and citizens in general. in different ways. One of the things we are developing, so in fact, all the questions, in my opinion, are connected. So how we are developing this is also via creating tools, supporting decision tools for creating NbS based on evidence. So from the data to taxonomy to metrics, and all these things are together to create knowledge which is also transferable to people. I finish here, so even before the 2 minutes.
Thank you. Fantastic. Luisa.
Yeah, thank you very much. I just agree to my earlier panelists, what they're saying, and it's so complicated not having the PowerPoint because you can go outside what we're thinking at first to say. But I will try to stay to my, I think we need to, in Sweden, at least we need to translate and adapt the international policies into a context that's relevant for the local practitioners. And we have an example. We made our own NbS guideline in like 2021 based on the IUCN guideline. So it was very nice hearing it now. And just to make it more easy to understand what it is in the local context and what kind of examples you can share can be very different in a, I don't know, Arctic region compared to some Southern Europe NbS example. So, and I think it's been mentioned quite a few times, but we need to engage the, when coming up with good ideas on a municipal level or regional level, we just need to stay for a while and also include the locals in coming up with a solution, not just like this is the best solution, you should do this, but also involve them in creating the solution. I think that's also one way to be able to gain all the values we want to have, not just this is my idea, it will solve this problem. So yeah, to work together, I think that's super important.
Thank you. And finally, Muka, what are your challenges?
Yes, I mean, actually what we try to do in Georgia is resonates with what Daniela mentioned. So what happens with you if you establish the nice Caucasus hub and then this nice European project ends, and so you don't have money actually. But what you can do is write actually not in the paper, but in the computer, yeah? So therefore we use this kind of approach, the planning, try to plan. So actually some others are paying for planning. So what we did, we use the strategic environmental assessment as a tool, because the spatial plans, for instance, and actually Georgia is part of the European movement in that, because we try to harmonize the SCA legislation with the EU because of association agreement. So legislation is there and NbS is there, and you can always prescribe doing the NbS in the spatial plans. So nobody understands that, as a gentleman mentioned. So you can write whatever you want, you know, and the ideas are nice. So the concept is nice. Nobody is against. Okay, it's going. I'm simplifying, of course, but that was a way of bringing the nature-based solutions into the planning documents. Then we went a little bit further also, you know, nobody knows how to do the SCA. Yeah, we're exploiting that idea. So they cope on you, so you have to try to do the good environmental assessment, and then you integrate NbS. And the same happened with the policy documents, like a partial policy. And therefore, you can go from big and you can go to the small, and you specify with the hope that the planners and the engineers will figure it out. So as we know, they don't, yeah, but so far, which is good. So idea is there. So use strategic environmental assessment, put on paper things, and after 5 years, they will come and ask you, so what did you mean here? But again, I'm joking. You really need to cooperate with planners primarily, and then they will really, if you overcome that barrier, then the document is there.
Thank you, Mamuka. Second question. How are you mobilizing or using the latest research and innovations, the latest results coming out of there, to strengthen the use of NbS in your countries? Have you identified certain knowledge gaps, and also, as we heard this morning, maybe evidence gaps and needs that could be answered by the scientific community? Short question.
Yeah, really short question. Thank you for the second one. So on this particular question, so we're of course leveraging scientific research and innovation. First, we rely on scientific programs and IUCN contributions. So these one were presented, and concrete projects such as those under the LIFE program. So I really want to stress that this LIFE program is important, and thank you for the colleagues from the Commission who presented it, because as we talked a little bit about it, it's a bottom-up approach, and as a result, that's how you also build projects with the communities. So they build guidelines, they build toolboxes for these communities. And these initiatives have also raised, of course, new scientific questions, which is why under the France 2030 Resilience Plan, we built a new priority research program you heard of, which is the SOLU-BIOD program. I think you're going to have other words about it later because we have the lead president of this program right here. So yeah, I'm not going to focus on that. And then we ensure a strong engagement with the scientific community at all levels. First of all, upstream, because the central administration, which I'm being a part of, identified key questions and helped to build these research initiatives. But then also at the scale of each project with some collaboration with our National Protection Environmental Agency, which is the Office Français de la Biodiversité. And this one allows to have some stakeholder committees, some continuous dialogue at the project level. And at the regional level, we're currently developing what we call knowledge hubs. So similar to already existing hubs in order to address biodiversity and structure expertise to enhance knowledge. So basically, our goal is clear. I have 30 seconds left to establish solid evaluations that support evidence-based science policy choices. Basically, in order to make NbS a cornerstone of climate change, resilience, and adaptation, in France, we definitely need to have robust and financial socioeconomic analysis of the ecosystem services provided by these solutions so that one can advocate in favor of NbS when they're being compared with traditional solutions. That's probably the most important thing I want to focus on today. I think the BiodivNBS call is one answer to that. So thank you very much for all the people contributing to this project. And I think we also need to build today strong narratives toward what we heard before, the strong engagement towards competitivity, sovereignty, all the new narrative being developed by the European Commission. We need to build this narrative for nature-based solutions. Thank you very much.
So thank you for the same question, which unfortunately is here written, otherwise I would have already forgotten. So how we are capitalizing research and innovation and utilizing, mobilizing the latest research and innovation. So as I mentioned before, we are developing this catalog and tool, which we framed the Kata tool, just to recognize clearly what is the aim of this decision supporting tool. So from one perspective, it is working on the taxonomy on NbS. So we have a huge list of NbS dealing with the urban context, extra-urban context, or terrestrial in general, and marine. So which is something unique, which is cross-ecosystem. And together with that, so we are kind of capitalizing all the work done in existing catalogs and existing repositories. And this catalog and tool, so let's call it Kata tool, will be brought to the ground via the hub. Because as Daniela mentioned today, our hub is supported by the ministry, in particular by the National Biodiversity Future Center. That's why I'm here representing both of them, in fact. And also because I'm coordinating this task, which is the creation of this tool. And the idea is also to have a repository of case studies, because something I forgot to mention in the first question is how to bring people down to understand how NbS works is to show them NbS, so examples. Again, back when I was in Switzerland working with green roofs, we were organizing guided tour from all over the world to show them hectares and hectares of green roofs. And people were always astonished to see how easy it is to make a green roof or any NbS at the end of the story. So to bring people down to the fact, to touch them and see them, so that then they will ask for NbS. Everyone wanted to have a green roof after having been on a roof. Fantastic. So this is at the end the practical stuff. And so we want to develop this tool for multi-stakeholders, so for students, for policymakers, for co-governance and co-design. So this is the idea. So NbS are multifunctional. Our tool must be also multi-stakeholders.
You already answered the third question. I remember this. Louisa.
I like this Kata tool. It was a fun name for it. I think the second part of the question was certain knowledge gaps. So I will go into that part of the question. And I think one knowledge gap that we have discovered is how to communicate and how to learn about how biodiversity is affected by climate change, and then how our nature-based solutions can contribute to the biodiversity to be better prepared or adapted to a changing climate. So it's like a double-sided question, both how to monitor and follow how biodiversity and ecosystem services are affected by climate change, and then also how the solutions we put in to solve all the different problems we have actually are working in the long term. So yeah, I think we need more long-term monitoring of the solutions that we have, and also monitoring the different values that we from the beginning had identified as the ones we want to achieve. And also just another question, would be interesting to hear if another country has also have this question popping out. And I think it's a consequence of the nature restoration, not law, what did you say, regulation. And that's regarding the choice of trees and urban vegetation. So the municipalities comes to us and asks what kind of trees and what kind of urban vegetation should we, now when we are greening our cities, use? Should we use the native ones, or should we use exotic ones because they might be better to handle the new climate? So that's just a question that's been popping up, and we're not really there to answer it. So that's just, yeah.
Good example, Mamuka.
Yeah, actually, I was part of 1.5 project, 2 projects, and quite a number of tools, impressive ones. So, and I saw there are now 92 projects. So there really a lot of tools are there. I would like to concentrate on those which I used. It's a connecting nature, the framework. So it really provided the workflow for us, how to do things. Another was the impact assessment. You see the words, the NbS impact assessment, not strategic impact assessment. That's where it cleaned really. So when we said, okay, maybe we use this methodology in our impact assessments. And also the beautiful co-impact app. Just check, yeah, co-impact.app. Yeah, so there is a nice system. You go there, and in a couple of minutes, you can generate a draft plan. Yeah, and then of course you have to adjust it for months, but the plan is already there. And so it was really a rewarding experience using the tools, the European tools. But I think the request I have is that, and looks like it's happening from the discussions, please integrate them, put it in one place, make it kind of easily visible for countries like Georgia and Armenia, for instance, so that if you give the decision maker, this is the NbS, they can easily understand what it is because they are smart enough to understand it. So it's therefore, that's the request. So it's now spread in the many tools and many databases, at least 4. We saw at least 4 the global European databases, bring them under one umbrella and sell it as the kind of an instruction. Yeah, so would you like to do the NbS? That's where you go and do it. And yeah, in 30 minutes, I have to mention that our Armenian colleagues in the hubs, they're very practical and they're very smart. What they did the wall, you know, the simple wall, the simplest, so they're just fence. You know, and then you have all those issues which you tackle with the NbS. Yeah, so you have to deal with society, you have to deal with teachers, you have to deal with children, you have to deal with the government because they may not want this fence to be the green. You know, it's strange, but that can happen. And so you can model this, and you don't need to build the fancy wall. Even the simple, you know, the vegetation and fence is good NbS already. And I was so happy to hear from Chiara that even doing the green roof is easy. So I will come to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mamuka. And you also started on the third question. The third question, and I'm going to ask you to take it in a shorter time, is about how you, not that it's not important, but how you, how do you do the cross-sector collaborations with different stakeholders to upscale your NbS in your countries? Please do it a little shorter because I want to have time for questions. Thank you.
Okay. So we've already started answering that, but thank you for the question. So we're working on structuring the partnerships and the collaboration across different sectors through the development of a new ecological engineering roadmap. It's not being published yet, but we're working on it. It's being designed, and it aims to mobilize ecological engineering expertise and tools at scale to support the development of NbS, and especially it's intended as a practical tool for decision makers and stakeholders. So the roadmaps will support key public policy goals. We of course express the KMGBF, so 30% of ecosystem protection and restoration, the reducing the rate of establishment of invasive alien species by 50%, ecosystem restoration, etc. And this roadmap builds on existing strategies such as the National Biodiversity Strategy, our NBSAP, but also the Water Plan, and will aim to mobilize both specialized actors such as researchers, conservation managers, and ecological engineering firms, but also non-specialized actors such as local authorities, landowners, businesses. So it's a very important work, and we will probably see it in this year, 2025. And I wanted to make a final focus on the fact that we still need to remain engaged in international discussions for collaboration, and especially take advantage of the many different events we have this year, the World Conservation Congress, the UNOC 3, but also COP30, in order to advocate, to share best practices, and to show that NbS are practical solutions, because we still need to advocate for them at the international level. Thank you.
So we could expect the French to bring the engineers in now. Getting back to the discussion.
Okay. Well, it's actually going to this direction. So we cannot expect to have the transition just from one day to the other. And I think the collaboration across the sectors, and so government, scientists, academia, and businesses should actually empower this gradual shift. So from gray to green, and from not native use of species in NbS towards ecosystem-based design. And I think, again, showing the effectiveness of NbS is the secret. And another thing, going back to how our CATA tool works, which I already introduced before. So we wanted to have an interactive tool, which means also the involvement of users, so citizens, which can not only study and interface with this tool to know what is behind, so the back end, how the informatic people say, but also to upload case studies, and which means also uploading monitoring data, which is then something, let's say, a growing system, interactive and growing system. So the more users you have uploading case studies, and the more knowledge, of course, you can share. And at some point, we'll ask the API to NetworkNature, so that we will have not only several databases, but one database for all. So that's it.
Thank you.
I think this question is quite difficult to answer, because our policies are not that concrete on exactly how the collaboration should work and be handed out. We're more, trying to highlight that collaboration is important, and you need to find all the different stakeholders to collaborate with. And I think the most good examples of project that's been successful in like working over the academia, government, private sector, communities, it's the big EU projects. Like we have some Interreg projects that's actually addressing all these different stakeholders, but on like a smaller local level, I think it's more rare that you have all the different collaboration partners in your project. So perhaps we need to make it easier to collaborate on a local level with like different stakeholders. I don't have the answer how to do it, but I think that could be a good idea. And also I think the private sector, we need to get
like the private sector to finance the solutions they are also in favor of. So they definitely need to be more engaged into the work, into the upscaling of the nature-based solutions. And maybe we need new kind of forums to meet where the private sector and academia and the governments can meet. So yeah, I don't have any answers on how this could best be done, but I think we need to kind of interact and share our different perspectives of the NbS in different, yeah.
Thank you, Mamuka.
Yeah, it's difficult. The cross-sectoral collaboration, also between the levels of government, to put on the shoulders of NbS people, but otherwise you cannot do it. Actually, the way we approach this with using the formal tool, which is called the strategic environmental assessment, it was helpful because it's participatory by nature. It's prescribed by legislation, so nobody will be surprised that you are calling the public meeting. So they will come because you have to do it. It's a must. And then you can talk about the NbS also, among many other things. So therefore, it was good to put this under that umbrella. This simplified the communication, or the need for the communication with the government, with the planners, with engineers, with the community, because they also need to know, I mean, what will be happening next to them. Therefore, it was a good umbrella. Another point is that for NbS to become the mainstream, we need a little bit of paradigm shift. To me, the definition of NbS is that any project is NbS. So you do the transport project. If the reason is the nature-based, then transport project has the more chances of success. And I'm not theoretical here. The Green City Action Plan of Tbilisi, so EBRD's flagship approach. So they did excellent transport project because it was part of the Green City Action Plan, because the first thing was the environment and then was the transport. I think we have to approach all the projects like this, even the social ones, because the social arguments can be misused to do the wrong things. For instance, in the coastal erosion, they bring you the social voice, you know, how much social hard infrastructure is needed, and nobody will talk about the mangroves, not in Georgia, but somewhere. Everybody talk about the walls, and that's what we do not need. Therefore, this paradigm shift is needed also, and then probably the NbS has chances for success.
Thank you very much. We are running a bit late, so I'm going to see if there's one or two questions from the room or comment. This is your chance to ask a question or make a comment or express your enthusiasm. The gentleman there, we have someone. Sorry, we've lost our mic runner.
So first of all, thank you to the panelists. It's kind of a meta question. I come from the United States, but I live in Berlin. As we've seen in the last 75 days, things have changed unimaginably. So how do we prevent changes in leadership to protect things like the environment?
You have 1 minute. Who wants to take that one?
Thank you very much. But I mean, we all share this question right now all across Europe and the world, I guess. So it's important to stress the fact that, yeah, we need to find ways to defend the environment in other ways, maybe with other types of narratives, which was the last part I was trying to focus on in the second question, I guess. We can see that at the European level today, we're talking about competitivity, sovereignty. We need to find ways to integrate biodiversity and its role into these kind of narratives. So for instance, when you talk about water competitivity, water sovereignty with the future European strategy for water resilience, what you could say is that by preserving biodiversity, you're going to preserve the water resource. And as a result, that's probably one way to say that we still need to protect nature. I mean, it's probably going to be through the development of new narratives. That's something we're trying to do within my directorate. trying to build the future narratives that could allow our ministries, our ministers, to defend the environment in this new era, I guess?
I would answer with we should empower people in the sense with knowledge, in the sense that people must be aware of the importance of protecting environment, every single person, not just at high level, I would say. And so that they will ask for it in the sense that, for example, at the moment, people will spend 1,000 euros for a mobile phone, but they will never spend even a cent maybe for a tree. And because then it costs maintenance and work and etc. But the value of a tree is way more higher than a mobile phone. So I think by empowering people and to finally act this transformative change we are all advocating for is not the answer, but could support this shift even across different government and revolutions, let's say.
Not an easy question, but I think I'm more into Nicolas' narrative thought that we need to be able to also speak about like climate preparedness and climate resilience, and in that way we can still work with the nature-based solutions and gain the biodiversity, like all the values we need, but we just shift how we frame it. We can adapt us to other, like, I don't know, like the EU preparedness strategy, there's a water scarcity strategy coming up this year as well. So I think we just need to try to be relevant and try to follow also what's on people's minds, and then just make NbS also relevant in a new kind of world. I don't know.
Yeah, actually, yeah, so good, a provocative question. But what did not happen in 75 days is that we have the issues here. So like March was the highest temperature, highest ever March temperature, yeah. 2024 was the highest temperature, and it goes, physicists know it, with the exponential curve. So it's really the rapid rise, and therefore they will come to us, the politicians. Yeah, so they will recognize that they have to do with the real issues, and the issues are becoming more and more real. Therefore, I'm not really concerned about this ongoing political things, because in the long term we have an issues and we have to resolve those issues. Again, I think that Europe has a lead in this, like with the Green Deal, and that puts the priority on the environment. That's why it is called the Green Deal, not otherwise. Therefore, I think that Europe recognizes what is the priority, and you have to continue with this leadership.
Yeah, I think we must resist much, obey little. Oh, to quote Walt Whitman. Sorry, I'm going to stop the Q&A because that was too big a question. No, because we are running out of time. And I'm going to ask each of our panelists to share one key takeaway. It can be a key takeaway from this panel or from anything you heard since the beginning of the session at 1 o'clock. So Mamuka, you go first.
Yeah, I like Chiara's, it's easy to build the green roof. So therefore, yeah, it's easy. The NbS, the definition of NbS, it should be easy. If it's difficult, then nobody's going to do. Thank you. Thank you. We'll come to you.
Great, Mamuka. Louisa.
This is even more difficult than the question from the audience. No, I just feel very uplifted by meeting so many NbS people. I've never been to an NbS conference before, so just getting to know all these new people and sharing the knowledge and experience, I think that's what I'm taking from this first day. Yeah.
You are not alone. Okay, Chiara.
Since someone stole my quote, I would then find another one, which is go out and look for nature and imagine for a second the world without us, and you will realize how many NbS are outside without our job.
On my side, I think it was Valerie from WCMC, who said we've been doing nature-based solutions for hundreds of years. So let's remain humble on that. It's not something new. In France, for instance, in the 19th century, we planted huge forests in mountain areas so that we can prevent landslides. So I think it's something we can just tell ourselves that we're not doing something new. It's not that difficult. It's just how to mainstream it everywhere. And as a result, we need to advocate for this everywhere, like in my place in international forests, but on the ground too, etc., etc. And I think it's probably the most important thing to say. It's quite a technical term, you know, nature-based solutions, but still, when you talk about it to people, they all understand. When you plant a tree, when you protect a river and everything, they do understand. So we need to communicate on that.
Thank you very much. And I'd like you to give a great round of applause to our panel. And with that, thank you on my side. And I would like to welcome the next panel. And while the next panel is taking a seat, this panel is about the prospects for biodiversity and NbS projects. Hang on, my title is wrong. Anyway, how can projects upscale NbS for increasing capacities and knowledge of policymakers? That's the title of the panel. This time we have 3 panelists, and it's going to be the same rule of the game. So ladies, it's not going to be 3 minutes per question, but 2 minutes per question. So you have to be super sharp. And then we have, as panelists, we have Martine Hossaert, and Martine is a senior scientist in the middle there. She's a senior scientist at the French CNRS, which is the National Research, the National Center for Scientific Research. And she's the program director for that project that has an incredible acronym, PEPR, SOLU-BIOD. I think you may think about your name, which structures and strengthens the French research community on NbS. We heard about it earlier, around innovative scientific challenges and policy support. Then we have Marije Schaafsma. She's the head of environmental economics section at the Institute for Environmental Studies in Amsterdam. So we have our environmental economist here. She's involved in IP-based business and biodiversity assessment, and she's the principal investigator for the Fair Nature project, which brings together different approaches on environmental justice. We haven't heard much about environmental justice this morning. And then we have Hai-Ying Liu, and she's from NILU in Norway. It's the Climate and Environmental Research Institute. And she leads the Biodiversa Plus Naturescape project. And in this project, I understand, and other projects, she focuses on integrating nature-based solutions and citizen science, there we are, to enhance climate resilience, urban sustainability, and public health. That's more or less what I understood from you. So we're going to go again with the first question. And so 2 minutes. What are the prospects of your project to increase the capacity and knowledge of policymakers and other end users in nature-based solution activities? Who wants to go first? You go first? The French first. Martine.
Okay, yeah, thank you. And thank you for everybody to stay there today. And it will be a very interesting meeting, I'm sure. And I just want to make a point about this French program. And it's really French. You know, it's a fund. So the French government decided to fund this project on nature-based solutions. So it's a top-down program. It's not a bottom-up program. So we are very close to the policy. The policymaker decide to have this program. So it's very different from other aspects that we can hear about here. So it will be hopefully easier to discuss with policymakers because they ask us to think about NbS and start NbS in France. So the main thing we've started to do is to have this network of living labs. So we have this living lab all over France and even in overseas territories. And is where we have this user and policymakers and academic together, and they can discuss for implementing a new NbS solution, and how they can also think about new policies to be able to implement more NbS solution around this one. And this program also is starting now to have knowledge hubs. For example, we will have one knowledge hub about evaluation that will help also policymakers to evaluate the NbS that have been implemented, and among many actions, because it's a 9-year program. So we have, and with 45 million euros, so we can do many things. So another thing that we are doing with this with this program is to have a regional network of expertise that will put also together business people and academics and also policymakers and users and like citizens, that they can go there and find a place where they have idea and solution for the local situations that they are experimenting when they want to implement NbS.
First, thanks for inviting NatureScape into this dialogue. We are preparing and we will kick off our project by the end of April. So NatureScape, we focus on post-implementation of NatureScape solution. Then we selected a specific NatureScape solution already implemented in 7 partner cities. So in the project, we aim to set up, or we call it NatureScape Solution Transformation Labs, NbS T-Labs. So these T-Labs, we function like living labs or dynamic platform to connect people and science policy together. So we plan a series of activities in these T-Labs, like we engage core stakeholders. They are involved directly for those implemented NatureScape solution project. Then we will sit together and co-identify the unique challenges, the good practices, and also the factors that enable the performance of NbS still generate expected impact, or the factors that hinder the performance of NbS. Then we will also apply the citizen science activities that for the awareness reason part, and also for us, we co-develop tools, both online, offline tools to enable the local community play the active roles and also collect data for us. So through this kind of activities, we expected, of course, increased knowledge for all the stakeholders involved, include ourselves, and also we share the knowledge within T-Labs among the stakeholders and also among the T-Labs in 7 partner cities. So we are very excited, actually. Yeah.
Thank you. Exciting. Marije.
Yeah, thank you for having me again here. So indeed, Fair Nature is focusing on how to bring in issues of environmental justice in scaling procedures. And we've heard some terminology already today about scaling up, down, in, deep, out. I'll go into that a little bit later on as well. But one of the aims that we have as Fair Nature is to make sure that organizations that are implementing and planning nature-based solutions indeed have that capacity and can have the skills to talk about, to implement, to work with environmental justice issues. At the same time in our project, that is also, that scaling in, as we call it, that capacity building, is also something that we both work on and that we analyze. Is that a condition for proper scaling out? So we do so by organizing 5 reflexive labs. So the labs here is something that comes back in different terms, where we hope to build stakeholder capacity, including our own capacity. We organize what we call transnational lab exchanges. So, for example, the Dutch Living Lab, or the Dutch Reflexive Lab is what I should call it here, is really interested in knowing what's happening in our Danish lab. So we're organizing those cross events as well. And then we have a transnational expert panel that also brings in knowledge from other cases to share best practices. And ultimately, the aim of Fair Nature is to develop that Fair Nature guide that really, for practitioners, that really sort of aims to show
and help and guide how environmental justice can be brought into scaling of nature-based solutions.
Thank you. So let's go on to the next question. It's about the barriers you foresee in translating the research and activities in your project into actionable policy. So we go to policy and how you plan to address them in your projects.
In our project, we think that the biggest, will go exactly what you said, it will be to integrate social and environmental justice in NbS project. And we don't want we want to be sure that we are not, we can avoid all the negative aspect of NbS. I will mean like gentrification and forget about vulnerable people, most vulnerable people in our NbS that we are implementing in our living lab or everywhere else in France. So we, as you have labs, we have knowledge hubs, but same thing, but they are French, but some foreigner in that case can come inside of our knowledge hub. And so they will start in 2 months from now, and they already have some questions that they want to consider to go further for this environmental justice. And so what they want to do is to produce tools that allow to evaluate justice by itself. Is there a special justice for NbS? And how we can assess this justice? And also the second topic that they want to answer is what justice is in evaluation. Who makes this evaluation? It's only policymakers, it's citizens. And so that's one of the second aspects you want to study. And the last one will be evaluation for greater justice. And can this can participatory and adaptive evaluation of justice in nature-based solution have a transformating project going inside too.
Thank you. Hai-Ying.
There are many challenges and barriers, and today we have already heard from previous presentations, like policy coherence. Like we know government, they have different departments like water, food, energy, climate, and health. Nature-based solution touch upon all of these areas. So it requires cross-sector collaboration. It's everybody understand it, but there's challenges to do it. And another challenge, the reason we focus on post-implementation of nature-based solution, because there's challenge for the maintenance and also sustainable, running the nature-based solution, and also long-term monitoring. Because most nature-based solution project, at least the project that I have been involved, is project-based, 3, 4, 5 years project. After project finished, there's a little room, or there's no resources continue to maintain it. So in our project, we aim to sort of target it at this type of challenges, and we apply multi-actor approach. That's why we say, okay, we engage all the core stakeholders. They have been involved specific nature-based solution implementation. Then we sit together, co-identify the challenges need, and also co-develop, we call the governance model that we aim to embed it. The NbS in the relevant current policy document, for example. Like we need to figure out the possibility, what type of nature-based solution can be embedded in which type of current policy documentation or action plans. We also aim to develop a scenario, like future policy action plans, if it's possible. So that is the part of work. We aim to do that, and also through citizen science activity. What we learned, if you make local communities and the individuals, citizens, students, they play active role, they learn. So that is aiming to increase this awareness and also societal acceptance of NbS. So that is what we want to do.
Thank you. Thank you. So maybe the hardest question, but the more fun of all.
Shall I not go?
The dreaming one. It's about if you think. So, sorry, Maria. Sorry, I was going to. Sorry.
Yeah, we do an irregular order. I know.
I was looking at the.
That's fine. So in terms of barriers that that we are currently thinking about, I think we identified 4. So I'll go through them quickly. So one of the first things is I think that in some spheres, nature-based solutions are still seen as a green hobby. Nice to do, but is it really a solution for societal problems? And what we hope to do with what we call scaling deep is really shared knowledge, but also values around justice to see how you can bring in nature-based solutions as a just solution for resolving some of our biodiversity and climate issues, and really focus on that reflexive learning on justice. The second important thing, if you talk about justice, then of course it's power imbalances. And so bringing in what some of the previous speakers also said, marginalized groups and voices, and amplify those voices, listening to people carefully is really important there. A third misconception, I guess, that was also mentioned before is the idea that nature-based solutions are expensive and non-effective. Chiara mentioned that as well, I think. And we have some work in Fair Nature as well, looking at different financial arrangements, working with the private sector as well to see what is feasible. And that is also where, again, exchanges between different countries and between different labs in Fair Nature is hopefully going to take away some of that misconception that it's only expensive or a green hobby. And then finally, what we're also running into are these regulatory barriers. You may want to do something in a particular spatial area, but local regulations don't allow for it. And then what we've seen so far in pilot cases is that you then need that one individual in a particular place that is really the champion. But that is really difficult. So how do you take away those regulatory barriers, and how can you learn from pilots on how to do it better?
Thank you. And I'll start with you with the third question, so I'm sure I don't forget you. So the last question was about, if you think about 5 to 10 years after the end of your project, what would be like but an ideal transformation, either in policy or society, in terms of practice, approaches, behavior, whatever, that you would see, that would be an ideal result, an ideal transformation. So
I have multiple sentences for that, but I think the key thing for me would be to see that nature-based solutions would be scaled out and implemented over a wide geographical area on the condition that it is done fairly and justly. So in the implementation and planning phase, but also post-project, that all these questions around justice are normalized, that we don't need to send reminders out of, think about that justice, that it's not a sort of afterthought, but that it's normalized, that it's a standard criterion for implementation, that people have the capacity to do that, the skills, but also that appropriate incentives and mechanisms are in place because of these trade-offs that you will see with other objectives. And where such trade-offs take place, I think it's also really important that there's some form of restorative justice, that there are compensation mechanisms, but also ways of accepting those trade-offs and how to deal with that. And I'll stop there for the sake of time.
Want to do it?
Okay. I like to dream. Our project will be finished in the year 2028. So 5 to 10 years, let's see, by 2038. I envision nature-based solution is fully embedded in the urban planning and governance. It's not about like shall we do the nature-based solution project or experiment or pilot? It should be whenever you implemented any urban planning project, consider nature element, or at least nature thinking should be embedded there. And also nature-based solution is recognized as a sustainable solution at broad and large level, societal level, and supported by long-term policy, and also, most importantly, funding framework. And with regarding to the awareness and also social acceptance part, like community members, a local individual, they are engaged in the designing of nature-based solution and implementing and also monitoring
the impact. So at the end, it comes to the like a community stewardship, like make the nature-based solution thriving. So thank you.
Yeah, I can share the big dreams of my two colleagues. I think the things that we will want to do is, is to have this NbS recognized in France as, the main things that we need to do, and they can be very successful, that we can have very positive information and communication about that, and we make that in NbS plan in French government really increase. And so that will be one of the main success of our program, but also that we have been with all the demonstration we have done in the field or, in university or with policymakers, is that also that environmental, rules or standards are not big constraints. They are some things that we can use for innovation. And based on this innovation, we can also have new socio-economic impacts and values for NbS. And so the last dream will be to have this program is finishing in 9 years, 8 years now. So that in 8 years, we have a French observatory on NbS solutions that we can tie to all these European networks that we hear about today.
Great. I love when people dream. We have time for questions. So please, Mr. US, don't come with such a hard question. Yes.
Thank you, the panelists. I know that I'm not yet at that point, but I'm afraid one of the barriers that I think I'm going to deal with in the future, that is the differences in legal competencies between different governments, local, regional, and national. Do you have experience of that? Have an idea for the future to me? An advice?
No, to be honest with you, I mean, we don't have law as a particular focus point in our project. So that would be the short answer to that. But yes, indeed, what we already see, maybe it's not necessarily law as such, but already the regulations around spatial planning and how that operates at a local versus provincial in the Dutch case versus a national level is creating problems for doing exactly the same thing in one place versus the other. So I would imagine that transfers to your question as well.
Yeah, to answer to this question also, I can refer to our living labs, and we have 2 living labs in overseas territory. So for example, in French Polynesia, they have their own role for environment protection. So we have to, and we want to have also integrate their law in the living labs that you are using. And for example, they have marine protected areas that they're using around coral reef, and we are integrated this role of French Polynesia in our living lab.
Yes, we have another.
Thank you.
Did you want to comment on that one? No, okay.
Thank you for a very interesting panel. I wanted to ask you about the issue of popular acceptance and popular resistance to NbS. With apart from the idea that NbS is a solution, is something good, right? But it's maybe something good for someone, right? Like there is different perspectives. And how do we overcome all these different perspectives and myths, and how do we bring people and politicians on board? And I can give you an example. We're using an NbS that was about putting a kindergarten, instead of having concrete-based solution for a playground, they wanted to have a nature playground. And the parents, the teachers, and the politicians were worried about so many different things, so they didn't want it. How do we deal with that, with resistance?
I can give you an example, like how do we deal with this resistance, like for the air quality study. In Oslo municipality, they organize a debate how nature-based solution improve air quality. There's a lot of debate because for the air quality scientists, they said no, nature-based solution doesn't have a significant impact on the air quality. That's why we don't use nature-based solution to mitigate the air pollution issues, because there's not enough documented evidence-based. Because the core mechanism for nature-based solution to interact with air quality, because it changes airflow. If in the, for example, here, the very narrow street canyons, the air pollution there, if you have nature-based solution, it will make air pollution worse because it's captured. The airflow is not get out. So we have to be honest to communicate with different stakeholders. What is the trade-off? What is the benefit? So everybody understands. If they are willing to support, that's fine. If they're not willing to support, there must be some hinder factors, right? They're not positive to naturize the kindergartens, for example, because maybe they consider safety issues, maybe they consider the pollen issues, because many people suffer this kind of problem. So let's overall, the benefits there, positive benefits there, but there also, if you don't implement it carefully and plan it, then the scientific based, there might be, worse the environment instead improve the environmental quality. Yeah.
Oh, I think also one of the solutions will be the co-construction, that you are not arriving, with all, academic or non-academic knowledge, but all your knowledge and saying, that's a way of doing it. The only thing that people can understand and share what you are or what you will be doing is just co-construction at the beginning, but not only at the beginning, also during, the development of the project. And discussing, for example, from mayor from small city, they will be very interesting also to share with us evaluation. They never evaluate, correct. They don't have any tool in small city to evaluate what they have done. So they are very interesting to go along with us from the beginning to the end, and they can be able to evaluate and know exactly, and also transfer to the to the citizen, why this project was successful or why it was not. But they were because they will be participating to this evaluation.
Not sure how much I can add to that other than agree, but I also think it's important to recognize the history, as you were saying, and where you got, to which point you got, because also not doing something has implications and perhaps means that there are injustices that other people are not happy with. So I think from a sort of justice perspective, I would say that also considering the history, why people like or dislike certain nature-based solutions, but also why they would resist it and what the injustices are in the current situation are all important to bring to that table. And if you start talking about solutions and start from sort of that recognition. But it's not only about what might happen if you implement, but it's also what is the current situation and who's unhappy with that, and showing, for example, that whether it's sort of voices you don't hear about often or those that are, I think it doesn't really matter, but I think it's important to show both sides.
Thank you. Is there anybody in the room who's less than 25? Nope. Less than 27? You are. So I'm going to take that question over there, but then I'm going to have you ask a question. Sorry, you're the youngest in the room, so you have to ask a question.
Please don't ask how many people in the room is over 60 something. I was scared it was your next question. Well, I don't mind. No, I just wanted to add something to this solution issue, because sometimes the word solution is tricky because people might think it will be solution. It will solve everything. So I remember an ad, I don't know what it was for, but it kept stayed in my mind that there are no simple solutions, but intelligent choices. And in terms of nature-based solutions, in my experience, it is when there is some resistance and some, for instance, an example, it is very important to point out the co-benefits, because sometimes for the community, some of the co-benefits are more meaningful than the actual problem that's meant to be solved by nature. So having more trees, what it means for the children, for the elderly people, can be more meaningful and more close to what they have as problems at the actual problems. Maybe they are not so much aware of air pollution, but they are very much aware of the co-benefits of having more green areas. So I think that we should always keep an eye on the benefits and really point out the co-benefits. Because sometimes, as you said, the main issue is not the problem for a certain community in a certain place, but the co-benefit from having this solution is very meaningful. So in my experience, it has been very important to discover the co-benefits with the community. So let's forget about the problem. Let's think what you said. What will happen if we would have that thing and that thing and thing, or if we don't have it. So that's something I wanted.
Thank you for the comment. Does anyone want to comment on the comment?
It's great comment. I like it very much. Because there's no solution solve all the problems, right? That must be the integration of a technological solution, digital solution, social solution, plus nature-based solution. So nature-based solution is important. We monitor and assess trade-offs, like what you mentioned, because there's gentrification issues, there's a conflict with land use. If you implement a nature-based solution, but urbanization, we need more land to build the house. And the nature-based solution, some plant also emit VOC, it's air pollutant. VOC interact with ozone, it generates another air pollutant. So there's a lot of trade-offs actually need to be carefully assessed. Then overall, it's positive impact. That's the point. Yeah.
Thank you. Any other comment on that? So could the Commission ask if we can change NbS by nature intelligent choices in all the Commission documents, please? Thank you. Okay, lady, your turn.
Because I was asked to find a question because I'm the youngest. Is there a way you account for participation of younger people that are, I guess when we talk about participatory research or participatory projects, sometimes the citizens that are mobilized or that are engaged are older, or I guess there's not a lot of young people that like spontaneously participate. So how do you do that? Or how do you encourage it?
That will be your job. She's working with me on the program, so.
That was a trick question for me.
Yeah, I think I am convincing that you will have young people with us, because when we go, in our living labs or knowledge hubs, you have a lot of young people with us. So I think I'm not scared of that, but I'm hopefully up that you will increase the number of young people working with us, and mainly also students, because it's important to have a new generation of academic on this NbS or NB something.
We have great experience working with younger generations, especially the middle school and high school students, because we did a lot of citizen science activities in nature-based solution project. They are curious, and also the younger, like middle school students, they like to learn the species, insect, butterfly, and then we can sort of interact with them. We have the mobile app. They can use it to take picture, then we learn what species it is. And then we give them information if the species herbs can be eaten or can be used for medicine. But most importantly, we sort of run in the education lecture, this type of activity, like to show them like how nature is good for the climate, for carbon capture, for biodiversity. That is a very important part. And also we have some low-cost sensors. Students, they're very much interested, not because they want to go out, carry it, measure temperature, noise, air quality in the neighborhood, but they want to set up the sensor by themselves, and they see the result. When they go to the park, they say, okay, CO2 is this level. And then they go to the traffic road and then say, okay, PM10 is very high. So in a way, it's like they learn, they engage, and then has potential actually change the behavior. Because very often they think, oh, we suffer environmental issues, but they don't really realize they are also the contributors. So from a behavior change perspective, the younger generation is much more easier to engage with and also much more fun because they are very talented and also very challenging for the researchers. Yeah.
Same for our project. What I find really, and what I'm really looking forward to is that we have a number of environmental justice experts, but also social justice experts in our project. And I think they're really sort of making sure that as a project, we pay attention to different groups, including youth groups. And that is going to be in a lab that is looking at urban green space. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to seeing what comes out of that process.
Yes, you can.
No, I love this question so much. I just came back from the Vatican for the youth symposium to talk about nature-based solutions there. It was a little bit weird when I read the invitation. I said, what the Vatican wants with me? But they wanted me to talk with a very young audience, and there were many people would raise their hands to your questions there. And there's one project that came out of the NbS Edu World project, which is a campaign for youth, which is really targeting the engagement of youth in these NbS projects. But there are also like this youth organizations, Young Go, Youth for Nature, there is the Green Generation Europe. So all these groups are super well organized and they're very much willing to engage in the NbS discourse. So they're super present at COPs because you saw maybe in the session in the morning, like the youth group is one official group, like with women, with indigenous communities. So they're really recognized into these processes. So they're really keen. And one thing that I think is a gap also with NetworkNature and the projects is that we don't have a sturdy place for these youth to look for jobs in NbS. So this is a huge gap that I think that if somebody wants to do a spin-off and create an enterprise, that's probably a good idea because they're interested. And these youth people coming up, they're really like purpose people. They don't want to get just the money. They want to work with purpose more than any other generation. So yeah, so they're our allies.
Thank you. Okay, who's older than 8? No, sorry. This is your time. One key takeaway from the whole afternoon. Stop in Maria. Okay.
We say already so many things to this afternoon that's difficult to handle it, but at least for SOLU-BIOD, our program, we expect that, when you finish this program, even, we are speaking about funding, but that funding will not be an issue, and that we have convinced, every decision maker, every policy maker that nature-based solution is a transformative change that we need. And also, I really like the discussion that we have around young, and that we have also enrolled young people working in NbS jobs.
Thank you. Don't fight.
So I think at the last panel, there was a remark that the social component was dangerous, perhaps to bring in. It was kind of controversial, I thought, to end with that. I would say the opposite. It's necessary. We need to bring in those justice considerations. So I really think it's a sort of difficult project or topic, but we do need to be open to this, and we do need to have those difficult conversations with people who may be opposed, or maybe not convinced, or have legitimate concerns about it. Because let's be honest, it's not going to turn out positive for everybody.
Thank you, Hai-Ying.
I would really like to advocate our NatureScape project, the core concept, nature-based solution, transformation lab, NbS, T-labs, burn, nature, people, science, policy together to grow nature-based solution. So bring nature and nature features into city is a smart investment for our future. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I'd like you, audience, to give a great round of applause to our speakers. And so we have a few minutes left, and those minutes will be used by Osman Tikansak, who's one of the brains behind this whole afternoon. And Osman is from Formas in Sweden, and he's also in Biodiversa, and he will conclude.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much, Sybille. So, well, apparently, talking about the key takeaways was not the favorite question of the panelists, but now we want to ask the same question to you to begin the wrap-up session. And if we, yeah. And to do that, we will use this interactive tool. I'm sure most of you are familiar with. So I would like to kindly invite you to take your phones, scan the QR code, and go to WooLab and enter the event code, which is AHTUBD, as you see on the screen. So we have a simple question with one word or one phrase to summarize your key takeaway from the day. This will help us understand what was your key takeaway from the today by creating a word cloud. So, well, there was a test, and I'm sure my colleagues are fixing in the room. But as you enter your answers, it will start to pop up on the screen.
I think some people didn't have time to scan the QR code. Can you put it back, the QR code? Yeah. And make it smaller. You need a bigger phone.
Does it work? No?
There.
Oh, yes, you can actually
Smaller
code
code.
if you go to Group Lab. Yes. Okay.
That's because you're all older than 27, no?
Now, are most of you?
Someone is young.
Yeah. So we still have the test, and you can actually also give a like to the comments or the phrases that you like, so you don't need to write everything from scratch. And let's see. Disciplinarity, community, people. I think these were some of the words that we heard quite often throughout the day. And now, well, it moves too fast to keep an eye. And I think at least for the time being, it is not easy to select a winner, but maybe it also shows that there are many things to be taken into consideration when it comes to scaling up NbS or how we approach the day.
People online doing it also? I guess so. There's no reason why not.
I hope so. Well,
yeah, but some people.
15 seconds to go. Storytelling, transformation labs, BiodiV community. Well, NbS obviously is one of the bigger ones. Yeah, I think that's it. But still, I think cooperation is standing at the center, and I think it is the obvious thing that without cooperation and engagement, it is not so possible to accomplish what we aspire to do. But okay, thank you so much for this exercise, and maybe we can move to the wrap-up from our perspective. And maybe, and definitely, I should start by warmly thanking all of you in this room, our speakers, our panelists, operational team of Biodiversa Plus, our excellent moderator, Sybille, and everyone else in the audience for your thoughtful contributions and active engagement throughout the day. It's been a rich and inspiring exchange, and it's clear that we all share a deep interest in understanding nature-based solutions and how they work and how they can be more effectively supported, scaled, and sustained. Across all the presentations today, I think one powerful message underlined clearly, which is that we have excellent frameworks, partnerships, initiatives, the knowledge, and the policy momentum that we need to make meaningful and lasting change. But now I think it is more about the time to connecting these links and taking action by using these valuable tools. We began the afternoon with a reminder from IUCN, whose global standards for nature-based solutions provides us with more than just guidelines, but it also gives us a shared language on NbS, which is much needed. The IUCN Global Standards is a clear and credible framework to design, implement, and assess NbS in a way that is holistic, inclusive, and robust, to say the least. And I think it reminds us that the stakeholder engagement isn't optional, but it is essential for achieving our ambition. Because co-creating solutions with the stakeholders is the only way to go and achieve tangible and long-lasting impact. Next, we heard the Biodiversa Plus partnership, who is helping to build the research and innovation foundation that NbS needs. By mapping the current landscape and fostering joint programming, the partnership is not just filling the knowledge gaps, but it's also aligning research with real-world needs. Through their partnerships, close collaboration with initiatives like NetworkNature, and by promoting success stories together, they are helping member states to build the evidence and momentum that is needed for real societal and ecological transition. And speaking of momentum, NetworkNature brought us into the center of the NbS community, showing us how essential it is to connect people, places, and policies. NetworkNature's work in mobilizing NbS hubs across Europe demonstrates the power of shared learning, collective intelligence, and cross-sector collaborations. These national hubs, as my understanding tells me, are not just knowledge centers, but they are also catalysts for transition. They hold huge potential to support countries in designing their national restoration plans in near future and align them with the EU Nature Restoration Law by providing access to tools, expertise, and peer learning opportunities. Then we turned our focus to one of the most urgent fronts, which is climate adaptation. We were reminded that nature-based solutions are climate solutions in essence. But to truly scale them, we must understand both our dependencies on nature and our vulnerabilities to change. And as we heard, we face real barriers such as gaps in awareness, in evidence-based decision-making, in financing, and sometimes in fairness, justice, and equity. But on the other hand, there are clear pathways to move forward, from robust monitoring and evaluation frameworks to locally grounded solutions that reflect the needs and priorities of communities, especially the local stakeholders. And I think one clear message was that equity and resilience, they should go hand in hand. And finally, we looked at the policy landscape where the European Union continues to lead globally in advancing research, capacity building, and policy support to NbS. The Commission's commitment is clear, but the call to action is also clear at that level. We must bring together these scattered pieces into a coherent, collaborative whole in general. And because only then can NbS truly be mainstreamed, not just in environmental policy, but across sectors and across borders. So, as a wrap-up, what can we take with us to finalize it? In a nutshell, I think it is that nature-based solutions are not supplementary or secondary, but they are essential. And that their success relies on quality, collaboration, equity, and evidence that we repeat throughout the day. And that we, people in this room, in this network, are part of a growing community, a momentum to make NbS a cornerstone of how we live, build, adapt, and restore. To conclude, I think it's important that we leave this room not just inspired, but hopefully equipped and committed as a stronger community that is capable of bridging the gap between science and policy by generating actionable knowledge. And before I close, I'd like to take a brief moment to acknowledge something quietly powerful about today's forum. You should have noticed that all but 2 of our speakers and panelists were women today. I think it's a strong reminder of the diverse leadership driving this work forward, and which gives us another reason for optimism. And with that, I'm closing my words, and thank you all once again, and looking forward to meeting you again next year with another engaging Science Policy Forum of Biodiversa Plus partnership.